Present, we have Holly Howard, Jim Bryant, Arlen Dierks, Jennifer Tiff, Timothy Rowe, myself, and Ostendorf, and Superintendent Carson Anderson. Nikki Buck is not here tonight. So let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Should we probably unplug that dehumidifier?
Oh, yes.
You want me to unplug it?
I think that's what we did before, unless you know how to turn it off.
Nope.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So our workshop agenda is set. First up is discussion of the organizational chart. So I'll let you take the lead on that.
Sounds good. We discussed this at our last workshop session. We got some good feedback, and so this is kind of the second round. And this time, I did invite Sherry Johnson to join us to talk about special education administration, but perhaps I can just briefly touch upon each area so we kind of know the scope of the discussion. And then we can start with special education. So the first with special education administration, Marcia Walker did resign at the end of this year. And so Sherry actually compiled some options that are shown in the attachment. And I concur with Sherry Johnson's recommendation to move forward with option B, which includes a half-time elementary coordinator and either a secondary supervisor or assistant director. Sherry can go into more detail with that. We also need to talk about director of teaching and learning. Currently, this position is in the district director's master agreement, and with a range, a salary range. It does not require an administrative license. And so I've always taken it to mean that if someone doesn't have an administrative license, that person would be on the lower end of the range generally. But if someone had an administrative license, then that person would be paid, at a higher end of the range with all other things being held equal. There are pluses and minuses to requiring an administrative license. Before I posted, I thought, we should talk about that together to see if that is something we should require or if I should just post it kind of in general, and then, let the interim superintendent, select the best person for the job with or without that license. The next area has to do with the business manager supervision responsibilities. Based on feedback from board members and administrators over multiple years, there have been some questions as far as who should supervise who, especially since Jackie is currently an employee of an outside entity. And so, this particular proposal assumes that she would not be supervising most people. I did leave supervising the AP clerk because it's such a business intense position. It's only part-time. But the proposal there changes some supervisory responsibilities. Also, I've been thinking about what the communications manager should be responsible for, and I made some edits in the original proposal based on feedback that we gathered a couple of weeks ago. So those are the areas that are up for discussion. And if you don't mind, Anna or Ms. Ostendorf, if we could have Ms. Johnson kind of go into more detail with special ed administration issues. By the way, the reason I put this first is that this is an urgent need to fill the position or positions as soon as possible. So we want to hear what the board has to say right away.
Good evening, board members. Marcia Walker, who had been hired in the position, had been there for a year and a couple of months. April of the previous year was when she was hired, did resign. We have a 0.5 coordinator who has been a 0.5 coordinator for Red Wing since January. That is going very, very well. It is Carrie Hansen, who I know you're very familiar with. She has been working with the elementaries. Our elementary buildings have some great systems in place, and we feel good about continuing that 0.5 coordinator level at those elementaries with the due process facilitators that we're continuing. So then at the high school level, our thought is to hire either a coordinator or an assistant director who would be housed right in the high school to support that team. We really feel like this team here at the high school needs kind of some hands-on, available at the minute support in the area of special education. You can see the costing. I worked this up first, and then I had Jackie go through and make sure that all the numbers were correct. And so either option A or option B have a savings, not a lot, but again, I know you want to see that side of it as well. I would recommend option B if we are able to find someone. The reason is really below when you see the word staffing, because so many of our special education teachers are in their first 3 years. They need 3 evaluations each during those first 3 years. And so not having someone with an administrative license puts an incredible burden on our principals. So this person would be housed at the high school, but would help with evaluations throughout the district as needed by the principals, if we're able to hire someone with administrative license. We did go ahead and post just because of the timeliness of this, and we wouldn't hire, of course, until we got input from you, but we wanted to get a posting out there. We do have 3 candidates currently. None of the 3 do have administrative license, although 2 of them are nearly done. So I wanted to give you that piece as well. And we have not held interviews because, again, I'm waiting for input from this board. What questions might you have for me?
If I could ask a question.
Yeah.
When you say administrative license, do you mean a special education
Yes.
director's
Yes.
license? Okay, so right now our current arrangement is that, you're the executive director of GCD, but then there was a director who oversaw Red Wing.
There was.
And a part-time coordinator in Terry.
Correct.
Okay, so you're actually suggesting a slight decrease by not having it as a director level position.
It's the same FTE.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1.5. We had 1.5 before. We'd be going to 1.5. It's really straightening out organizational structures. So there's executive director, and then Nicole Baldoon is a director of SPED, and then everyone else would report to Nicole and then to me. We're trying to organize our organizational chart as well. So that did come into this thinking. It doesn't change what this person can do if we're able to hire someone with a license.
Right. But it's not a director position, so the salary for that person would be slightly less.
It is slightly less. Correct. I think housing that person in this building is key to us making some lasting changes.
Ms. Howard? Thank you. Can you explain 3 minutes on what Cannon Falls does in terms of how they utilize GCED and the difference between what we're doing here now and what they do?
Yes, so Cannon Falls has about 100 and I'm off the top of my head, about 120 students with IEPs. They currently hire a coordinator. So that person, and it's really district by district. I think of us kind of as a menu, and the districts come to me and say, this is the kind of support we want. So at this point, they're hiring a coordinator level. They don't need the support in a teacher evaluation or teacher discipline. That would be the large difference between those 2 positions. There's still my coordinator in Cannon, who has been Sharon Noble, and now she's retiring, and Alicia Dawson. I've been able to pull her back into our group. If those of you that remember, Alicia was a teacher for us and then a coordinator for us and then went to Farmington. She is going to be a coordinator for Cannon Falls this coming year. So she will do all the finance pieces. Right now they're working on CEDRA, but as a coordinator, she will not be able to do evaluations or any teacher discipline pieces that would come up. Conversely, Zambroda Mazeppa wanted support with evaluations, so they have an assistant director. So that would be the difference.
I think there's more difference.
Okay.
that I'm trying to understand. So they have 120 students, they have staff who are special education teachers.
Mhm.
They have no director of special education in any capacity for Cannon Falls?
I'm the director of special ed for all the districts.
Okay,
So on the Minnesota Department of Ed website, it lists my name for all the districts. So all of those people report, I'm responsible for all of their activities, whether they're a coordinator, an assistant director, whatever we call them. If we go to hearing or we go to a complaint, it's going to come to me.
Okay, so how many students do we have with IEPs? What's the differential? Is it like?
We have
300?
535.
So it's
535. That's on the bottom of your sheet. And I used the December 1 child count from MDE. That's where I pulled that number so that you could go back and look and verify.
I really appreciate you bringing this. What we've been doing hasn't been working.
Right, and I think we started to make some really good changes when we put the due process facilitators in place. So each of the buildings has a due process facilitator that has 0.2 or 0.3 of their position that they use to support staff on kind of first level issues. How do we arrange the paraprofessionals? How do we schedule students? Those kinds of pieces. Then pieces, and whoever is working with them, whether it's Carrie Hansen or this assistant director or Marcia before, meets with them monthly to answer questions and meets with staff to hold a department meeting. They take the next level. And then if it can't get solved there, then it comes to me.
How many due process? So one in Cobble, one in Sunnyside?
We don't have one in Cobble. That's a good point.
Okay.
We have one at Sunnyside. Well, last year we had one at Sunnyside, Burnside, Twin Bluff, and the high school.
You had 4.
We have 4, one in each of those buildings. Now, 2 of them have left, and so 2 of the positions are currently posted. Karen Meyer has been one of our due process facilitators. She will continue in that. Rebecca Suseg has been another one. She will continue in that position. And we do have internal candidates that are interested in those positions, but we're kind of waiting until we sort some of the rest of this out.
And why I say it hasn't been working. I think how many special ed directors have we had in the last 5 years? 5?
And
something's not working.
And if you, so I started to kind of analyze that. There isn't one issue. So, when Karsten and I were talking about it, I think housing someone right at this building could be part of the solution.
Yes, I have been asking for that to be, they would be part of the team here. I think that's one thing when we did that huge analysis of what special ed in Red Wing was looking like and where were our areas we needed to improve upon. It was basically what I understood was support for the teachers.
I actually have that on here. On that same handout you got, there was a second sheet, and that was the response to the future's recommendations. So we've actually, I don't know that you included that, Karsten, because we weren't talking directly about that, but I knew it had been a previous question of yours. And as far as special education goes, we have responded to each of the special education pieces. For instance, Karsten and I have met almost every week during this past school year. And that was part of it, that we needed to make sure that we were on the same page. Where we still need work, and COVID really kind of got in our way, was that tier 1 system. And so we need to continue to work with our principals to get the teachers the support they need to do interventions before students get to special education. So that's a piece we still need to work on. But as I went through, there's a response to each one of the pieces that they brought up for considerations. And I can forward that out to the board.
I think that would be a good idea for
Yeah.
the newer members that weren't part of that. I think, what did we spend, about $60,000 on that? 65?
Yep. And
Something like that.
yeah,
And it was right before COVID, snowstorm, everything. And so
yeah,
we didn't get a chance to
Yep.
really kind of pull that apart and look at what we could do and what directions we could go in. So I appreciate you bringing the fix, which could be the fix right now.
right.
I'm just not so sure that that's the direction I'm comfortable going in. I don't know about everybody else. I understand the need for a director. I understand all of that, but it hasn't been working, and I'm not sure why.
I think it's one person responding from birth through 21. It was that. So now when Carrie Hansen, the coordinator, would be the first line there. So it's those hundreds of emails that come in every week, and
Isn't Min still doing birth?
sorry, Min is doing birth to 3, yes.
Yeah.
And Brittany is at Coville.
Right.
But when there's a larger issue, which comes up frequently, then Marcia would be pulled to those. And so we're kind of spreading that out by having Carrie be there 0.5 and this other person being first line of defense, I suppose, at the high school.
Where would middle school fall in?
Yep. Yep, it would. I forwarded my responses to futures to Lisa. And so she can forward those out to you, because that was a great question. I think it was 2 board meetings ago you asked about that. So I went in and I pulled up the report and
There's a lot of moving parts and all
yeah.
this, and with administrative changes at the middle school and at the high school.
And that was another piece to support George with 2 new assistants, having this other support person who can help with issues that come up with students with special needs. I think will be very helpful to the system and in developing some interventions for them.
The numbers,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't raise my hand, but Jim is there too.
Yeah,
I'm on.
right.
Thank you. Sherry,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand it here. a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. Secondary coordinator, let me back up here. Currently, we're getting away from the director up on top. Yes?
Yes, that I would like to, because
Keeping a half.
I think it's confusing for staff. Mm-hmm.
Halftime coordinator. Is a secondary coordinator a full-time FTE?
It would be a full-time FTE, yes.
And what is that, other than a coordinator? So the other one would be secondary supervisor.
Correct. The difference
correct?
between the gray and the purple is purple has an administrative license. And so for people watching, the board is looking at a document that has option A in gray, which would have coordinator level staff, and option B is highlighted in purple, where there'd be a 0.5 coordinator for K-7 and then someone with an administrative license at the high school here, so that they could then help with evaluations or staff discipline.
As I was saying before.
Sorry.
So that is an FTE, and just because it holds a license, you want to pay them an extra $20,000 a year.
That is the salary schedule right now. They have an agreement.
And I'm not quite sure I totally get agreement of the new 2 superintendents that are, 2 assistants principals that we're looking at approving tonight would just be so new, they don't know how to do it. One of them has been with us for a number of years, they're a teacher, would know how to process those too, so. Okay.
And if I misspoke, it's not that I don't think they have skills. They do. We've hired them. But when you're coming together and forming a new team, you're putting systems together again. And so having that special education expertise at the table, I think would be helpful to them. They will certainly be qualified to do their jobs.
Ms. Rowe?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say that very same thing. When we're talking about coordinator versus, assistant director, and I'm gonna say this later on when we talk about other positions as well, but I think that gives us the most flexibility and ability to meet student needs, and I think that really needs to come first. If you hire a coordinator, you're kind of locked in. But with an assistant director, you've got a little bit more flexibility in terms of what that person can do, and I think it makes complete sense to have somebody physically in this building. Is it the fix? We don't know, but we have to try some things. I mean, we can't just say we don't know what the fix is, so let's not try. So I think that's a really good move, and I'm all for option B.
In 2006, when Stanner Hagen retired, the position was an assistant director position, and it stayed that way through Kim Chalmers. And then after that point somewhere, and Kim's been the longest person that had been in the position. After that, at some point, it became director. I'd have to look at the exact year.
But you're right, it's been a revolving door, but prior to that, there was a lot of stability
There
in that
was.
position, and I think it's worth that extra $17,000 or whatever that difference is. We're still at a cost savings, which I very much appreciate this chart that you've put together for us as well. It's kind of crystal clear, which is what I always appreciate as well when we're making these kinds of decisions. But I'm absolutely willing to give it a try and know that there's still a minimal cost savings. Yes, it's more to hire a director, but I think we need some stability in that position. I think we need stability at the high school with all the changes that are coming on. Mr. Dirks?
Yeah, I guess I've been trying to grasp this a little bit. First, the cost of district is coming up as half the cost. Why is that?
Special education is 50% reimbursed,
That's what you're
Approximately,
saying, is
yes.
that we're getting all 50% of a dollar.
Yes. approximately, yes.
All right, that answers that. Second, did I hear right that the elementary coordinator would be going through childbirth basically through grade 7?
No, it would be Sunnyside, Burnside, and Twin Bluff.
Well, yeah, but you said could be called in on the other.
They could be called in if Brittany
So
needed
just take that
support,
out, then
yes,
You're still kindergarten through
yes.
7th grade, that's 8 grades at 0.5, but then you're talking about a full-time person
That is an excellent question.
for the high school, which is 5 grades at this time. So
That's an
if you
excellent
give
question.
some clarity to me why we need to hire somebody full-time for 5 grades, but we only need a half-time for 7 grades.
I think maybe because we've had so many brand new special education staff at the elementary level, we've put some structure in there that hasn't been put in at the high school. So the systems are running very smoothly at those levels, Sunnyside, Burnside, and Twin Bluff. I think we need to spend more time and attention at this level and do the same. The staff are working hard. A lot of the staff at the high school level are more senior staff. And so we, while we've been supporting people that don't have a special education license and are coming right out of school and it's their first time, maybe we didn't spend as much time with the senior staff here. And so to put some of those same structures in place. So it's going to take a more concerted effort.
Seems to me if you put new staff in elementary all the time, that they need more help.
They would, but we've put some systems in place. Our due process secretaries at the elementary level have checklists that they use, many different systems in place to help the staff move through their work.
So do we just, once we get the system in place, can we cut back next year then?
With your number of
With the
students,
secondary?
with
You're
your,
saying that the system's in place in the elementary, that's not in the secondary. That's why we don't need as much help. So if we get the system in place in the secondary this year, do we need to continue?
with 535 students on IEPs, I would say, yes, you will need 1.5 FTE. The number of, the amount of support is just higher with that number of students. Consider all of those students have.
I'm not questioning the number for all of them. I'm questioning the number for 5 grades at the high school.
We might
versus
reevaluate
the
that,
other.
sure.
You're telling me that we need a full-time for 5 grades because systems aren't in place, but we don't need a full-time in the elementary for 7 grades because systems are in place. That's what I'm hearing.
You are hearing that. If we hire the administrator at the secondary level, though, they're also going to be helping support elementaries for staff evaluations, for staff discipline, and those higher level situations. We have right now a mediation that's going on. Those types of things take quite a bit of time. And so I think you'll still need that FTE, but it's something we will always evaluate because we restaff every spring. We look at the numbers and we staff to the numbers.
Ms. Howard? Thank you. Big picture.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of need. It's 1.5 isn't even enough. Big picture, it's not enough. two, maybe, right? However, I'm still feeling it's piecemeal. And I'm not feeling, if we have minute birth to 3, we have Brittany early childhood, but is Min 0.5, is she 0.3, is she?
Min is a 0.3 coordinator for the
0.3.
county.
For the county.
Mhm.
And.
Birth to 3.
And do we pay that piece? Is Red Wing paying that piece for the county?
She would be paid for with federal funds, and I'll turn to Jackie.
Yes, she's
Yeah.
paid for out of 100%
Federal funds,
Okay, so that's not part of what we,
correct.
okay, so Min is separate for
Mhm.
the county. Brittany's not for the county, Brittany is for Red Wing.
Yes.
Early childhood.
Mhm.
Then Carrie Hansen, or the 0.5, is for the elementaries with systems in place. Are those systems helped from the student support coordinators at those schools as well? Has that been part of the team
So-
that has happened?
Partially. So as we've tried to get tiered intervention systems in place across any of the districts, it's always easier at the elementary level to get tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 in academics and behavior. High schools are more difficult because of the period schedules and how to pull kids out of a credit to get intervention time. It's always, across all districts in Minnesota, it's more difficult. So
that-
yes, I think you've hit on something there.
So the 0.5 helping at the high school with the support, the other 0.5 of that position that I'm hearing is K-12.
I don't know that it would be 0.5, it's more as needed, but yes,
Well, you said like the mediation.
yes.
is taking
And they'll be,
a tremendous amount of
and
time.
they all work together. So Min, Brittany, all of us come together at 4 times a month and are just, so 3 Mondays a month, it is an hour meeting over Zoom where we're connecting, making sure that we have the supports in place wherever they are in the county. And then 1 Monday a month, we meet for about 4 hours. We train together and we make sure that we're problem solving together. We're not recreating the wheel, sharing ideas. So there's so much crossing over. Brittany is going to be in communication with Sunnyside and hence Carrie, so that we transition kids smoothly and transition programming smoothly,
And-
as an example.
And there's also community ed involved in Brittany's piece.
Absolutely. Yes, Brittany is 0.6 community ed, 0.4 special ed. I'd have to look
Where
to,
we landed.
that's correct.
Right, like, I'm not disagreeing with the need. That's not where my head is at all. It's more trying to process the steps and the people,
Mm-hmm,
not names, the positions.
mm-hmm.
Who oversees the TAs at this site? Who oversees them at this site? Who helps the scheduling at this site? There, you could say this person's 0.5, but what are their job responsibilities in the 0.5? This person's 1.0, what are their job responsibilities in the 1.0 that would justify that
Mhm.
pay? Or do we need to add another 0.5? I think where we're missing is what.
And I can send you the job descriptions.
I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
What the job descriptions are for those pieces
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying systems, which I understand, Arlen, I hear you. The moving parts of the systems are always moving and they're dependent on staffing. And unfortunately, if somebody who's running a system leaves,
Yeah, we're short 3 special education teachers right now in Red Wing for next fall.
yes, I think the job descriptions would help. I think more of that breakdown.
Mhm.
would help.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, kind of working in tandem with Arlen, or with Mr. Derricks and Ms. Tower, and further clarification all at the same time. One question I have for you with this position, I know that the main intent is for secondary or for the high school, but will there be enough flexibility so that this person could help at the middle school, for example, either during the year or in subsequent years?
They'll have connections to each of the buildings. I don't want to tie it down until we get started and see where the needs are. It's also going to depend on how we end up with staffing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of in response or question with Arlen, as far as, when the systems are fully in place here, can we make adjustments as far as?
We will always look at that.
Yeah.
We have to be.
And then kind of, I think Ms. Tower hinted at this earlier when she mentioned the student support coordinators. But for 7 grades, 8 grades, for 8 grades, K through 7, we have 6 people who are either principals and assistant principals, student support coordinators. Whereas at high school, out of 5 grades, we have a principal and 2 assistant principals. So, and I'm not saying any school is overstaffed administratively. I'm not saying that at all. But that could be part of the reason why we need more administrative support, especially education at the high school level.
I would agree.
Ms. Stitt? I don't have a lot new to say. I just wanted to say that I agree completely with what Ms. Rose said, that I agree with option B. Because of the flexibility, the need to have an additional administrator helping with those things. And like Ms. Rose said, I appreciate everything you laid out here so that we can see the difference between the two very clearly. I was just thinking about what Ms. Tower said in it as well, just about the people in the positions at the buildings. And to me, it's not a piecemeal thing. To me, it feels like the way you're describing it is that these positions are needed because then those people are in those buildings with those children, with that staff. To me, it looks as though, yes, we have them around the district, but that's where they need to be so that they can work, physically be in the space. Just as you're saying, we physically need someone.
Become part of the culture.
And I feel like this will help with that, and then also help with the transitions as those staff work together to help the kids transition from building to building as they go through. So that's kind of how I am looking at it. Thank you for that. Mr. Jerks?
I just want to say, I got my questions answered, that I'm not opposed to it. I want to say that I support the idea of trying option B here for the next year. I'm totally on board with it. I think it's great. We're trying to get our supervisors, I'm going to call them that, in our buildings to meet with staff. From some of the things I've heard in the past with some of our special ed administrators, sometimes the paraprofessionals, maybe you only saw them once or twice in the entire year. And so getting these people into the
Physically
building
here.
is critical, I think, so that they can get direction and support. And I'm on board with this. I do have some questions on some other part of the organizational chart, but I'm totally on board with this.
Mr. Ryan?
Thank you. It's not anybody's fault here. I'm just looking at the organizational chart. We have school board, superintendent of schools, and 4 pillars. But the GCED executive director doesn't answer to the superintendent. He doesn't answer to the school board. Correct?
Well,
Don't you have your own board?
I do have my own board
Compensate you?
made up of board members from each district.
Yeah, but it doesn't say. I'm just saying, I'm just curious, more than anything, is why the GCED executive director is on our organizational chart. When truly he can't tell you what to do.
And so my board answers to the superintendents.
Superintendents.
Yes,
not-
you are
not
correct.
one superintendent.
And I think the reason it is I'm responsible for all of the actions of the people that are listed there.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, I'm just
It's
wondering,
complicated.
if somebody here, let's say the principal asks I'm just being kind of picking on something here a little bit, asks the director to do these evaluations, and the director says, I don't answer to you. I answer to the GEC executive director.
But on the job description,
That's what I'm saying, it's right here on the org chart, they answer to you, and the building principal will have to go to you to have them to do it.
so we can tweak that because the job description is clear that they answer to both of us.
Okay, that was not.
Yes,
that has
the
not-
job description is clear that they answer to both of us.
That has not come out, so.
Okay.
I'm just
Yeah.
Kind of looking at the whole organizational charts that I've studied over the years, it's very unusual to have somebody that,
And-
that doesn't answer to this specific. So,
The example I said about the mediation, I'm handling that for Red Wing. I often come in and do staff evaluations or staff discipline when it comes to special education here in Red Wing, but in all of my districts, because under our joint powers agreement, that is part of my role to respond to whatever the superintendents need.
And I'll go to it, and I understand the need. I mean, Ms. Tower is a representative on the GCED board. There is a need, especially there's a big part of our budget, big part of our student base. So I get it. The need is there, and I'll go along with it. And I'm like Mr. Derek, I have certainly plenty of questions about the rest of it.
I think that's a great question, Jim. And it also goes back to finance. I'm the one that signs off on all the special ed finance for the districts as well as for GCED. So I'm responsible for those budget areas. So it's hard to write an organizational chart that captures that nuance in a cooperative. No, it's good points.
Everybody has, it's kind of like a Christmas tree. Top of the star is the person in charge. Goes down from there.
Ms. Tower?
Thank you. My thoughts around piecemeal are different than what your thoughts are. When I say, we have students with tremendous amount of behavioral issues, and they may have an IEP. What's the piecemeal piece? Who intervenes in that? And that often is complicated. And so if we have a 0.5 here and a 1.0 here, but the 0.5 is busy and they call the 1, or they have to call, it's not a simple flow chart. And sometimes the student support coordinators step in, sometimes the principals step in. But I often hear from people, and in my own experience, well, they don't have the answer. So you have to go to so-and-so, or you have to go to so-and-so, and you have to wait for an answer. And that is extremely frustrating as a special ed teacher. Who am I supposed to go to?
I agree.
And
That should not happen.
But it does, and that's kind of the piecemeal I'm trying to unwrap here. It is extremely frustrating if a parent were to call and say, hey, I have a concern about speech. Well, the principal says, oh, that's not my role. That would be the coordinator's role. Is it the coordinator's role? Is it the principal's role? The principal's the principal of the school. That piece needs to get worked out in terms of what people are responsible for and who responds, or is it all the people that respond? And it's happened time and time again where people have said, teachers or parents, I'm confused. I'm just really confused on who do I call? Who do I reach out to? What are my steps?
So that should not be happening. And so one of the things I can do is reach out to staff and have that conversation with them so that we can unravel that. I don't have that happening in my other districts, so I'm assured, I really feel good that we can figure that out, whatever that
And
is.
it could be the numbers,
Mhm.
right? It could be because you have more students and more families and a larger population that it gets more complex. It's not as simple as 100 kids, it's 500 kids.
Correct.
Right, and if we don't have enough staffing, then we're often, who's gonna fill in? So I'm not disagreeing that that's enough staff. I'm still not sure it's enough staff.
All right, let's move on to the rest of the
I agree.
organizational search.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have two in the packet. One is what our current one is, that was approved in August of 21. And then the proposed. Or working, I guess. Mr. Dierks?
I'm kind of torn on the director of teaching and learning, and it's a position we want to get filled as soon as we possibly can, but yet with the transition of superintendents and stuff, I'm wondering if it should wait till afterwards. So I'm just going to ask this question. How critical is it to have this position filled now, or could it wait 2 or 3 months? That's my question.
Yeah, We would definitely need to fill it now compared to waiting 2 or 3 months. Waiting 2 or 3 weeks is doable. That would give us time to have the interim superintendent on board, kind of fill out the team, and that's fine. 2 or 3 months just would not work out because it's at the end of the summer. We've already made our assignments. Other schools have made their assignments. I don't know who we've time.
But what duties of the director of teaching and learning need to be done, and what will happen if there's not a person there for 2 or 3 months?
We're fortunate because Ms. Whitcomb is working at GCED, and so she's very familiar with the things that are happening this summer in terms of curriculum, purchasing and implementation. We're lucky because she's already set up the schedule for the beginning of the workshops, and those kinds of things. So that helps with transition. But we want someone on board, as early as possible this summer so that we could keep that momentum going.
And I'm okay hiring somebody now, but the thing is, what are we wanting to hire? Are we wanting to hire somebody with a principal's license, or are we wanting to hire somebody without? Are we wanting this person to supervise this or not? And there's so many questions that come here, that's where I'm having a hard time filling that position right now.
Yeah.
That's where I'm leaving myself.
And the complicating factor, and you already alluded to it, I think, or maybe I did, is that we are going to be hiring an interim superintendent. And so that person may want to weigh in as far as the skill set or the certifications of the director of teaching. Now, the only caveat there is that the interim superintendent is an interim. And I don't know if we want to make a long-lasting decision based on an interim position, superintendent. So for example, if we found an interim superintendent who has a great strength in teaching and learning, and therefore we make a decision about the director of teaching and learning because of that, and then the next superintendent doesn't have that same strength, then I'm not sure how valuable of input that is. But we can wait on the director of teaching and learning as far as posting it and deciding if we want somebody with a principal's license. That's no problem.
Ezra?
I might sound like a broken record, but this is what I said last week. I think the more qualifications that you can list, the better. Cast a wide net and see, especially at this later date, trying to find qualified candidates who have already committed to other districts. I said last week that I felt really good about all of these proposed changes. I've been, prior to this last year, been on the personnel committee for 5 years. We've talked about oodles of different organizational ideas and positions and who would report to who. And so I feel like this is kind of the culmination of 5 years of work. I don't think this is coming out of the blue. The only frustrating part that I have is I feel like, as you're leaving, like this is a huge change at the end of your tenure, and I wish this was something we decided 2 years ago, not with you having 2 weeks left. So that's my frustration and my hesitation in all of this. But at the same time, on the other side of the coin, I feel like we need to set up our new interim and superintendent with a really good, crystal clear cut structure in place. And I feel like this does that, this accomplishes that. And so that overrides my frustration quite a bit. I like who reports to whom. I think one of the questions we've always had is when the superintendent is out, who's in charge? And it's never quite clear in my mind who that person is. And so I feel like this answers that as well. I think this also gives us the options of having more support for our superintendent. And so I guess I'm landing on being very supportive of these changes for those reasons. I'll stop there. You've already heard me say why.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. I'm all for organizational structure. Have been. I'm not in favor of approving this tonight without all the board members present. I think we have, that's look like my math is right here. $30-some thousand we're gonna give people to be supervisors in a small little area, district office. I think with that $37,000, we could look at getting the director teacher in with assistant superintendent license. To be that person in charge of that whole group. $9,500 to be in charge of 2 more people, 1 minute or 20-some years. It's kind of last minute thing. I mean, who applied for these? Who interviewed for these? Who was there job postings for them? Job classifications? I think we're handcuffing, I don't mean to disagree with you. I think we're handcuffing the new person to let that he or she come in and make those decisions to see how they want to structure this place. And this is the last meeting for him. He's coming up with this at the last second. And I think it doesn't do us justice to the new person that we're looking at, talking about hiring, before I can tell them, we made these changes just before you started. Here they are. Take them or leave them. I think that person needs to weigh in as much as he or she needs to weigh in on some of the other things. Now, could I go along with the teacher and learning thing? Probably, but I can't go along with the rest. I just think it's something to look at, that we need to look at, that person needs to look at, because just a lot of money that we're just gonna spend that we haven't even looked at to see if we talked about for 5 years or 4 years about assistant superintendent, health personnel. And I think that's the direction we should at least let that person, new person that we have coming in, weigh in and consider.
Ms. Tower?
Thank you. I'm extremely encouraged by the questions. I'm excited to hear what somebody has to say about coming to Redwood and what they bring to the table. We don't know what the strengths are. We don't know what the opportunities are that are in front of us in the next 3 weeks. I had said this before, I appreciate the frameworking of what it could potentially look like, because what it was something that worked for you, Karsten, and that's okay. But trying to build the ship before we hire a new captain, we do have some base work already completed. We do have people in place, so when that new person comes in, the ship isn't gonna sink, right? They can see that we have administrators, they can see we do have directors of community ed, we have directors of, whatever Ann Jacobson does, the director of
Managers, communication.
Yeah, communication, sorry. So we have those pieces in place. I'm not opposed to looking at an assistant superintendent that does carry a tremendous amount of knowledge in teaching and learning and curriculum, instead of making that an isolated position. And the one piece I go back to in my head is, interim or not, that person is going to be making the decisions about those people's job performance. So they will be evaluating whether or not somebody is qualified and doing a good job at whatever it is for the new people that we're looking to hire. And I think it would be fair for them to kind of say, okay, well, these are the positions Redwood needs to fill. These are the ones we've already got filled, and getting to know the team and saying, where is it that we need help? Where is it that we need, and letting the team have some input on that. And I know, Karsten, when I asked you before, did you have your administrators weigh in on the chart? And you had said not yet. So my question tonight is, have you had an opportunity to have them weigh in?
Yes,
And what were their thoughts?
I didn't hear negative comments about the proposal. So, and kind of jump back a little bit. This plan we've talked about these issues for years. The reason why, Jim said this was done last second, it really wasn't done last second, because we have talked about it. And I've taken a lot of the feedback and suggestions from board members and administrators over a period of time. The reason that the Director of Teaching and Learning issue is coming up now is that Jess's resignation was just approved. I mean, so, you know, I wasn't gonna change that position or suddenly talk about requiring licensure when our current Director of Teaching and Learning isn't licensed. You know, things were working well.
Right, yeah.
And so now's the time to really, you know, the best time to make significant changes is when somebody leaves, because then you can open the door and really see what's important and make decisions. So it definitely was not done last second. You know, another point I'd like to make is that this is all being presented in a workshop. There is not a recommendation for approval at this workshop or even at the meeting, the subsequent meeting in a few minutes. So I'm presenting the second version. That's what I should be doing. And I think that's what you were hoping I'd be doing. Second, let's see, if, again, you know, it addresses a lot of the school board member perspectives in terms of, you know, who supervises who. You know, right now we have an SMS employee supervising numerous school employees. This addresses that. We've had questions about who is second in charge. This proposal could answer that as well. It reflects the work that our human resources manager, communications manager, and district administrative assistant can be doing that will further support the interim superintendent. So that's why it's being recommended tonight, you know, for your consideration. It's up to the board to decide, but that's how I feel about that right now. Sorry for going on when it was Ms. Oskendorf's turn to chat.
Okay. I like the organizational chart. I think especially with the Director of Teaching and Learning, I think that having a principal's license for that position is a great idea so that that person can help with supervisory duties. I think there's not enough of that kind of split out. So I really appreciate that. So that part especially, I think is great, and I think we do need to move on hiring, or at least posting that position. The reality is that we wouldn't have, you know, somebody being interviewed or hired until we would have the interim superintendent in place. But I think to get that started, because we do need to have that person sooner than later. So I think being able to post that and to require the principal's license and then see what we have for qualified applicants and let the interim superintendent kind of decide from there based on, you know, how that turns out. And I think there's ways for the interim superintendent and the eventual superintendent to still shift things around, of course, in this organizational chart. But I think this chart gives them a little bit better place to sort things out, and for that Director of Teaching and Learning to take on more supervisory responsibilities so that that interim superintendent is not also trying to do all of that. I think it balances out the job requirements a little bit better. So, Mr. Bryant.
Thank you. If I said you brought it at the last second, I meant you're bringing it in at the last second. It's been for 3.5 years I've been advocating for the comment you made about the outside vendor supervising our positions. And that, you know, 3.5 years later, we finally are going to be looking at that. So,
Yeah, and again, the last 2.5 years, we've had COVID. Amy French was hired just a year before that. Lisa Segura started a month before COVID hit us. We've had a lot of stuff over the last, Mr. Bryant, we've had a lot of things happening over the last 2.5 years.
as I was saying before I was interrupted, I'm in favor of the special ed or teaching and learning thing, but I think we need to wait. I'm not in favor of the other ones because I think this new superintendent needs to be involved how he or she wants to shape the organizational chart of the school. So yeah, yeah, I could go on, but it doesn't matter. So,
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, thank you. I hate to do this because I don't even like the sound of it, but is there such a thing as an interim director of teaching and learning? And that sounds bad when somebody's coming in that we aren't putting somebody there, but I can go along with the principal's license part of it, but I'm just wondering if we should be going all the way to a superintendent's license. And if we paint ourselves in a corner and don't do that right away, how do you move to that idea or concept going forward? There's a lot of stuff that's come out in a very short period of time here. And certainly there are some pluses to having principal licensure, but there are also some pluses to having superintendent licensure. And I don't know if we're really in a position to make that decision now, and really an interim superintendent probably isn't in a position to make the decision whether we should have that as a superintendent deal or not. But a year from now, maybe it's something that we want to. So is there some way? I'm trying to find a way that the option is there to go further with this, and I don't know if there is a way. So if there isn't, then I'm on board with the principal.
One possibility, again, I think this bridges what a lot of people are suggesting would be for us to post a director of teaching and learning with the principal's and/or superintendent's license preferred but not required. That's a possibility. Then it can be posted, we can take applications, the interim superintendent can look at the array of candidates, and if there's somebody, you pick the best person regardless of licensure, but if licensure is going to be important, then you kind of focus on that subset of candidates. So that's a possibility.
All right. Let's move on to our referendum planning. And we do have parts of this coming up in the regular meeting. So, Ms. Robertson, are you on the call?
I am here.
All right. What would you like to share with us in advance of the part we have to talk about? So we have the resolution for the election in our packet for the regular meeting. What things do you want to bring to us before that?
I think just some careful consideration of what we need to how we formulate the discussion points and key things. And for instance, I think you can't. We can just provide information. We just need to be really careful. We can't try to persuade people, although we can give them very good reasons, I think, for passage. Otherwise, of course, you wouldn't be reading it. But I think it's just the approach that you want to take. And then I started some communication lists, but of course, until we finalize what the language is, it's a little hard to formulate that. But and then I'm hoping that I get some input from key administrators and school board members, all of you, about what you'd like to see. And then Carson has given me, and Lisa, we pulled some things from 2018. Promises and delivery on the things from 2018, I think, are going to be key too as we move forward. And I think, Jim, Mr. Bryant, you have mentioned that we don't have a lot of time between now and November, and especially since the absentee balloting starts in September, late September. So I think if we could have some dedicated workshop time when people would put together some things that would really be helpful as we put together a social media, print, radio, and our mandated communication efforts.
And we do have the referendum planning put into all of our workshops for the next few months here.
Thank you.
A little more prominence once we have an official direction of what we're doing. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, the only thing I totally agree with Ann's perspective on, making sure that we're neutral. You never want to tell people to vote yes or no on any political issue ever, during work time. before using school resources. The one reminder is that we made promises 4 years ago when the referendum passed. We will follow those promises through the entire 5 years. We're on the right track to do that, so we need to make sure we understand that, believe it, we can prove it, we all need to have that talking point because we are following through. However, passing a straight renewal in November, regardless of the year, does not mean that we can necessarily promise those same things for the next 5, 6, or 8 years. And that's because we have declining enrollment. So I just I'm sorry, I probably mentioned this before, but we want to be really careful about saying, well, we're going to renew it, and so we can promise to do the same thing. And maybe the board will decide, yes, we're going to cut other things in order to follow through with the same promises. But right now, with the way it looks, I'd be really careful about promising. And that's coming from someone who supports a straight renewal. So I'm not trying to get the board to increase it. Just, I want to make sure that we're forthright.
All right, so it is 6:04. I am looking for, I think at this point, a motion to adjourn and take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll start up our regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Rowe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carried. We are adjourned at 6:05. We'll reconvene at 6:15.
So Sherry, are you going to be sending those position descriptions to Lisa?
She sent them to all of us.
I actually sent them to all of you. I just
Perfect.
kept it simple.
So is there more discussion about this organizational chart change thing? Okay. Oh, yes.
I think it'd be more appropriate, just so I get to that item, to limit ourselves in a discussion to those two items. So I will be voting on the motion.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table, by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tower. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so that fails.
Was a vote 4-2?
Yes. Okay. What was the other thing that you needed to change, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, typically, at least the way I've always done it is that the agenda just approves the topic in general, and that when we get to the topic, we can make adjustments. And so my preference would just be to wait to item 4 to change, the information included there.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody have anything else for the agenda? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion by Ms. Rose, second by Ms. Tift. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Is it just you?
Just me, I think.
Okay, so that carries 5-1. Okay. Next up, our educational plan. So just draw your attention to that in the packet. Recognitions and upcoming events. I just wanted to recognize that this is Superintendent Anderson's last meeting with us. So thank you for all of the work that you've done over the years. And
Right back at you. Thank you to all the board members, past and present, for everything you do for the district. And it's been a great joy for me to be part of it. Sorry for jumping in there. But.
okay. All right, any other recognitions, upcoming events?
I'd like to just give a shout out to the girls golf team. I think they had some after school got out activities and the tournaments, and so I think they represented rather well. So thank you, ladies, and congratulations.
Ms. Tower?
I would like to invite people to the Winter Open on Friday. The golf course is it at? I'm so sorry. I read the brochure and now I can't remember. It's either at the links or it's at the country.
I'll look it up and I'll let you know.
Okay.
But it is on Friday, the Winter Open, to support our athletic and activities programs in Red Wing Public Schools.
And I know in my day job, Community Ed has lots of activities going on throughout the summer, so make sure you're checking out that Community Ed calendar. Lots of great things for all ages. All right. Public comment. I don't believe we have anyone signed in for public comment. Did you receive any email public
No, I did
comments? I did not either, so we will move on past that. Update on our educational planner. So Ms. Robertson, looks like you're up again to give us an update on where we're at with that.
Great, thank you so much. As you know, that school board voted to go with Inflection to help us at how we engage and incorporate, improve how we engage and incorporate internal, external student, staff, and community voices to ensure what we do and how we do it, prepare our students to succeed. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. I had included a bit of a timeline for you, just to see where we were. And last week, I met with the Jones Family Foundation. And then also on June 17th, Dawn Wettern and I met with Matt Coleman, the CEO of Inflection. So I just wanted to point out a little bit of an update that Matt, Mr. Coleman, is very much aware of our leadership changes here, and it was very reassuring. And it feels great that he's actually going to help shepherd our program directly, bringing in support staff to help us handle things as we go. They're very much dedicated to helping us do that. One of the neat things I think that he pointed out was that having an interim superintendent is actually quite ideal during this process. As I point out in my report, are the voices of community, students, and parents will rise to the top. That's not to say that wouldn't have happened under Mr. Anderson, but we've seen this process come with great success because this district will also be looking for a superintendent during the same kind of time frame, and it should help improve our engagement and help us find a worthy successor to our current superintendent. Mr. Coleman asked for 2 liaisons to help shepherd the process on our end, shape the timeline. So specifically, he wanted a communications person and someone who really understands the community, including K-12, but also the big picture from early childhood, well, birth to death, really. And of course, with Tony Wettern as community education director, fits that role beautifully with 30 plus years. Plus, she does a lot of budgeting, understands contracts. The school board, of course, will have to look at the contract when it comes and approve it, and then we'll have the interim superintendent. But we're expediting some of that with her assistants, and then I will be attending all of the various events in the next coming months. So it made sense for me to try help plan when those are, and obviously we'll work with individual buildings and whatnot. But so I'll be completing some of those. 2 really key things I thought that you might enjoy is that Matt, we're hoping his schedule works, that he would actually come to Red Wing for 4 or 5 days. We were trying to pick out a great time, and he's a West Coast, California, Oregon guy, and he's like, can we not make it January? And one of the things that we talked about as a group was, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if we could have somebody come when we're showing off some of the best aspects of Red Wing? Beautiful leaves, one of the best drives in the country, Red Wing Arts Festival. So that's the plan, to have them come in October. We'll still have all that back to school energy. We'll also have that MEA for Education Minnesota weekend coming following that. So his energy level is really, I hate to use the word contagious because we're trying to get past the pandemic, but is really exciting to have that. One of the neat things too, for the first time that Inflection is going to be doing, they've got a really great record working, across the nation, doing data, and working with individual districts. There are 5, we're one of 5 districts that for the first time they're going to try put together a cohort. So we would have, there's a district, we'll be kind of in the middle, in either the 3rd smallest or 4th smallest, something on these 5. What a great opportunity we'll have for our steering committee to connect, and as we go through this process, to be able to hear from other groups and, hey, we're struggling with X, Y, and Z. And we might say, oh, well, we set up a table at the Red Wing Arts Festival and we communicated with our people that way, or the vice versa. We can learn from one another. And that is going to be above and beyond. Obviously, that would be part of our commitment to this process, is putting in our staff agreement, steering committee time. It's not going to add anything to our bill. It wasn't part of the educational plan or thing, but just the opportunity to meet other districts, I think, would be very helpful to us. So that's kind of where we're at. And I obviously would love to hear any questions or thoughts that people have.
So what is the whole time kind of looking like at this point? Like, what is the plan for, other than him coming here in October, like what's the general idea of when this would be completed, or do we know what that looks like?
We thought we should probably be incorporating the interim superintendent in part of that planning process, and obviously some other steering committee members. The thought was, originally we've been looking at a May to December for this year, if you'll recall the time frame. I think we'd be instead looking at, they're actually going to get started soon. We're going to provide them with some data and documents, but we were thinking more wait till after the election when we know potentially school board, referendum, some of those kind of questions, And then it will overlap a little bit with whatever your interim, your permanent superintendent search would work. So I would say October to May, maybe something like that. But they again said that we can be very flexible with how the timeline fits. They want it to work for us. They don't want us to be hemmed in by a calendar that we preset, and then suddenly the board identifies something that needs super. We need to look at this X, Y, and Z. Whether it's something physical like a building or building configuration, or if it's more about what's happening in our classrooms and what we are doing. And we have also the October start kind of fits in well with a new Twin Bluff principal, other staff leadership changes, so people can get a breath. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mr. Anderson?
First, I think it's hilarious that he's only concerned about January. Yeah, but then more importantly, I want to reemphasize how grateful I am to the Jones Family Foundation for the $50,000 grant so we can make this happen. It's one of so many things they've done for our community, and I know that this process is going to be a game changer. I am completely confident in it. And so I think an interim superintendent, director of teaching and learning will be really excited about the end results of it. So again, thank you, Jones Family Foundation. I'm sorry for jumping in there when we're in the middle of a discussion, but I thought that was important.
Thank you. Ms. Howard?
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm excited.
Oh,
I think it's super cool. And thank you, Anne, for spearheading it. I know things are all over the place, but I really appreciate your tenacity on it and moving it forward and just getting it organized. So all we have to do is show up and ask questions, and you have been prepared for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, school board reports, I believe. Yes.
For negotiations, I can tell you that we'll be discussing some proposals coming up, non-classified principals, program assistants, and support personnel. So be on the edge of your seat for those coming up. We're very excited to bring those forward tonight.
I wanted to just make a comment about GCED. The meeting is this Thursday. Arlen is my alternate. He's not able to make it. I'm not able to make it. So I'm opening it up if anybody would like to attend the meeting. You don't have to. They'll give good notes. But it's Thursday at 7 o'clock. And it usually lasts about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. And it's at
Can I correct you? It's actually Wednesday.
Oh, it's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday? So it's 2 days. Sorry, Arlen. Are you available Wednesday?
No, Wednesdays are like that.
It's even worse.
Thursday, I probably could go and come back.
Well, then I got the date right. This is the wrong day. So, yeah. So if anybody wants to go, just reach out to Sherry and Cindy. Not saying you have to.
Anything else? Okay. Administrative reports.
All right, I'll make this real quick. First, I've been working with others on transition planning. We have a nice document that kind of outlines some of the issues that are coming up and then who the resources are and exactly where we are in the process. So I'm very confident with that work. There were several of us who met with representatives of Red Wing Youth Network, which is an informal collaborative organizations willing to help the district serve the needs of our kids. And so one area that they might be interested in helping us with is finding and organizing volunteers. If teachers want them in the classrooms, then they can help in the classrooms, or if administrators need help in the hallways or lunchroom or doing some other things, they're willing to help recruit. So I think that's a huge potential plus. Ann Robertson has a few different things on her plate, and I know that she'll do them really well. We recognize the need for enhanced customer service throughout the district. And we also recognize the need for a marketing plan. And so she will share those plans in the future, not tonight, but in subsequent board meetings. And so she's all over it. She's already talked about the educational plan. And then finally, we have the status of those federal grants related to COVID. Again, we list the amount approved and how much has been received. So if you have any questions, feel free to talk to Jack Ferris.
Any questions? Okay. Next, we're up to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to pull from the consent agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Tift. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. So that carries 6-0. Great. Next up are our donations and grants. So we have some generous grants and gifts given to us. Mark and Valerie Estabrook, $50 for the emergency medical fund. The Reading Public Schools Foundation and Jones Family Foundation grants totaling $58,865. Reading Ignite, $600 for the Learn and Earn program. And it looks like those Reading Public Schools Foundation and Jones Family Foundation grants were for a lot of different field trips, or I guess maybe the opposite of a field trip, somebody outside coming into the classroom. So lots of really cool extra things for our students. Is there anything else you wanted to add about those?
Impressive list of grants. Not only reflects generous donations, but also the teachers who have a creative spirit and want to do what's right for kids. So thank you to everyone involved in that.
All right, so I am looking for a motion to accept the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion to accept the resolution by Ms. Tower, second by Mr. Bryant, and as a resolution, we'll do a roll call. So, Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Deers.
Aye.
Ms. Dift.
Aye.
Ms. Rowe.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that carries 6-0. And again, thank you very much to all of those contributors. All right, now we are on to our business items. So first up are the data sharing agreements.
Based on feedback from the last board meeting, changes were made to each of the agreements to indicate informed written consent. So instead of saying informed consent in some and written consent in the others, we just said informed written consent. And so it's the same group of entities who provide services in conjunction with the school district for our kids.
Ms. Tower?
Yes, so I appreciated you sending the consent form to us, kind of a template of what, but I noticed it wasn't added to tonight's, or was it? I might have missed it. I didn't think it was. Where are we at as a board in using a unilateral form for all agencies? When we represent the sharing piece, so an agency wants information from the district, is the board looking for one form that all agencies use? Or do we double up and that agency has a form and we also have a form? I just want us to be really clear on how we're sharing the data and that people are very informed on the rationale and when the data, gets shredded, because you can't keep it for, extended periods of time. You have to have a reason for using the data, and it has to be able to make sense to the family. So if Head Start has a consent form and they ask the families to sign it, does Red Wing also want the consent form in our records that, we're sharing the data through Head Start's? And I don't know, but I think it's worth a discussion from the board. So Youth Outreach has a form that they ask families to sign to share the data. How does the district track who's sharing information with Youth Outreach?
And maybe with youth outreach, I know that you use the form that the school district has
Right.
developed, with our legal counsel, and that's the one that I shared. Do you have an additional form over and above that?
We have a permission form from youth outreach. It does not have anything to do with school data. It's just youth outreach permission to take pictures.
So it's just a basic
liability
permission
form.
form, so it's not the data
It has
sharing
nothing
form.
to do with data. The form that we use for data comes directly from the district. It's the one that's been approved already. It's one that Karsten had created. Okay, maybe not approved. We've seen it though.
Right.
We've approved it in previous years.
Mhm.
To me, just because part of my job is collecting the forms and looking at it and seeing them, to me, it makes sense that the form would be created by the district, but then also have kind of be suited for the organization that's using it, because different organizations will need different data based on how they are working with students and in partnership with the district. So it doesn't make sense to me that all of them would be uniform, because our partnerships are different and we need different information depending on the student's level. As far as sharing the data, when we get the forms through youth outreach, it then goes, we send them to Melinda in the district office, who then gives us permission to see the data for those students. So, and one thing I just learned too this last year, because I knew I had a form for some students, and I didn't have access to their data, and that was because the parent had opted out in the district-wide permission that we do. And so that was able to override the organization's data permission agreement, if that makes sense. So it's kind of, it's double checking. I mean, they, in order to actually get that data, then that parent would have to go change the opt-out that they'd already done through the district. But we do not have any access to data until we have that form. Then that form goes back to the district office, and then they check off and say, yes, this is what the parent has approved, or the guardian has approved, and this is what you have access to.
That makes perfect sense now. That has not been the case. So I appreciate that explanation from that group, but that's not been the uniform case. And so that's why I'm asking, does the board want us to use, not just for youth outreach, but for every place that's listed, one uniform sheet, even though it has to be, separated out into what that organization, their laws with their attorneys.
So you're saying that the forms that the other organizations are using are completely different from what youth outreach is using, and it's not created by the district? Aren't they all created by the district?
That's the goal anyway.
That's the goal, but it has not been the case. And so Fernbrook has their own forms, right? So they share a little bit differently with information. So I think it's important that the board's aware, but we have not used a form. You may have used a form in some capacity, but this has been a conversation that we've been having for a couple of years about a form and written consent. So I just want us to be very clear that we're agreeing on a standard form, or we're not agreeing on a standard form, and so that community members can understand, if I'm signing up for my child for Head Start and they're asking me to sign this consent form for data sharing, what does that form look like? Do I call the district for help? Do I ask the Head Start people for help? Do I call my child's teacher for help? Who walks people through the form, and then who's really in charge of the forms? It's a pretty complicated process, but I think it's one that we're in the right direction on.
I think the organizations, just my initial thoughts about this, is that the organization is responsible for getting the forms signed, collected, explaining to the guardians, to the families, what is the purpose of the form, why are we doing this, but then their responsibility is to then provide that information to the district so that the district can be responsible in what data is then shared. So I guess in my opinion, the form doesn't matter so much as the process. And I believe that the organizations know that, you know, in these agreements that we have with them, that we've approved, that this is the process that they go through, that they have a form signed, a written, informed consent in order to get the data. And they have a process within the organization of what they're going to do. And then we have a process within the district of where we take this and how we provide the data. So that's just my opinion. That we don't need to overlook at what every organization does, as long as we know what our organization is doing responsibly with the data.
I don't want to overlook. I'm coming at it from a special ed perspective. Parents sign many forms. And oftentimes when I go through forms with parents later on, they're really sometimes not sure which form it was that they signed for what, because there's multiple forms. And we can't assume that people are just going to remember signing a form and what that form was for. I think it's prudent upon us that we have a system in place so the organizations that are sharing data with the district, you know, there's communication both ways. So what I'm hearing you say is there's a very organized system with where you work and how you get the form signed. I'm not sure that, you know, that's for everybody. I don't want to know who's signing. I just want us to be aware that, you know, when we're asking families to sign with an organization, we're all aware of it and we have some idea of what the form looks like. So it could be more discussion later on. But when we talk to families who have second language, who struggle with, you know, all kinds of things and trying to understand, when you bring your child to school and all these people are coming at you and saying, hey, will you sign this? Hey, will you sign this? We'd like to help. We'd like to help. What is our process for that? So I just want us all to be very aware that it is a bigger issue than it feels like for many people.
If I could just add a little bit, there may be different practices depending on if an entity is acting as a school official or not.
Right.
And Fernbrook would act as a school official under some circumstances, but not as a school official in other circumstances, possibly. So it could look different depending on the organization. But for example, like youth outreach, Hispanic outreach, organizations like that, you know, it's clearer. So when somebody from youth outreach is going to be assigned as a mentor or as somebody who has access to information, then we follow, well, first the agreement and then our student release form, which makes it very clear what the district can share with that person. And so like Jennifer or Ms. Tiff was saying, well, backtrack a little bit. At first, we're much stronger now than we were 5 years ago, let's say, much stronger. Always room for growth, but we're much stronger. I know that 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever this process first started, we used a more general form that we use in all sorts of different circumstances. But the concern was that, parents might mark that it's okay to share mental health evaluations. And, with an outside entity. And it was way too easy, I think, for parents to accidentally sign off on that. And so that's why, like with youth outreach, Hispanic outreach, the form actually just leaves two blank possibilities, and then everything else says no. Because I don't want our school district to share that information, to an entity just because a parent was quick to say yes to everything because they trust the school district, for example. So I think we're kind of saying the same thing.
We're on the right path, and
Yeah.
I just want us to be very clear the path that we're headed down. I would hate to get into a situation where a family feels that they were taken advantage of because they didn't understand the form.
And one thing we also do is we do translate it into Spanish each year, so that Hispanic outreach actually gives the Spanish version and or the English version to parents so they can fill it out and fully understand. That's really important.
And the form is attached as an extra for
Thank
tonight's
you.
meeting.
The one that he had sent last week.
Yep.
Thanks.
Or I don't know if it was the same one. I went back and looked at it, and We've made some changes for the coming year based on what Melinda suggested.
Oh, nice, okay,
So it might be slightly different, but in general, it's essentially the same.
okay, thank you, Kirsten, I appreciate that.
Okay. Yes, I would like to make the motion to approve the data sharing agreements as presented, except the agreement with Fernbrook would have the school board clerk sign it just like all of the others. Is there a second? Okay.
Go ahead.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table, as recommended in the packet, by Ms. Tiff, second by Mr. Dierks. Any discussion?
Yeah, if I could just add, the reason the recommendation was made that way, actually is response to what you brought up last meeting, Ms. Howard. So we had all these agreements with me signing them on behalf of the school district, and then we had Fernbrook.
I think it was opposite, the clerk was signing all except for you.
Oh, yeah,
signing
that's right,
Fernbrook's.
yeah. And so I did some thinking. I didn't research it necessarily, but I thought, well, why would it be different? And then it hit me that Fernbrook has this kind of relationship with multiple schools. And so they're the ones who control the document. Typically, these kinds of agreements are just signed by the superintendent or the executive director of GCD, the leads of the organization. We've chosen to run it through the school board instead. So when we got the Fernbrook agreement, it had my name, whereas the other ones, have Jennifer's name as the signee on behalf of the school district. So I think that's why Fernbrook's was different, just because they do this with all sorts of schools,
Right.
And so and that's how they've done it. So, so the recommendation was made to change that. Because of the timing of everything, people on vacations and those kinds of things, we weren't able to get that changed from Fernbrook in time for tonight's meeting. But if we have this, they're fine with doing it that way, but it just didn't make the board packet. So if we change the agreements with Jennifer signed it, then we're all the same. They're perfectly fine, but it won't be executed until that change is actually made.
Any, did you have further discussion, Ms. Tower?
Yes, I'm really pleased with the progress that's been made around this. I'm still not 100% clear if a family were to come up to me and say, what is, I'm at the grocery store, I'm at Target, whatever. So they asked me to sign a permission form to share data. And I would say, who? Because these things do happen. Who asked you to, well, they're gonna work with this one group. I wanna have clear language that says it's on this page in the policies or it's somewhere. And the reason I'm being extremely cautious around this is there are several entities that come into our children's lives through the school doors, and you may not have signed up for it with your child, but my child might have, and they might be friends. And the next thing you know, there's talking or there's crossover. And I've heard of situations where families gently just thought somebody was coming into the school to help their child, and it didn't end well. And families weren't really aware of who's coming into school and why they're coming into school. And I can speak more to it privately later, but I'm still not clear with the full process. If somebody were to ask me, this agency wants information on my child, what does that mean? I still don't have the answer.
I'm thinking of an example, but it's different than this scenario. So it's hard for me, I'm kind of stuck on that thing.
And I'm just gonna be voting no. I still don't have a clear answer because there's many agencies and there's children all over the place. And I just think of, when they come into the school, students, they're always like, I have to go meet with so-and-so, I have to go meet with so-and-so. My head always goes, oh my gosh, your parents know? Do they know you're going to this group? Do they know you're joining this? Do they know?
If I could, and I'm not saying I'm encapsulating everything that you're saying.
No,
but,
that's fine.
I take it your concern is that you just want to protect student privacy. So that we
Absolutely.
don't want, or so that school folks are not sharing information about a child without going through the proper process. That's really, I think, what you're getting at in the end.
And families, families
Yes.
send their children to school.
Yeah.
Being all trusting that when they come home, that things are just gonna be, there's English, they saw their science teacher, their math teacher, and then, other things happen. So absolutely, it's about protection. Thank you for clarifying that, Carson. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm
Right.
just trying to have a clear process so I have a clear answer to families about the situation.
Yeah, and if that kind of thing happens, next year, one possibility would be, board members already spend a lot of time on school business already, but if there could be a connection made, like with you, the parent, and then the interim superintendent, for example, who could, because we need to see the actual form or the actual request to make sure it's our form, that it's the right year, it's the right date, it's the right information, just to ensure that the process is being followed. I think that'd be the best thing, is to actually look at it, person by person as questions come up.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's, regardless, we could spend days and hours, talking about this issue, well, there's still gonna be something that.
Yes,
comes up.
I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for a step-by-step. If somebody were to ask me, what is the process? You turn to page 12 on the district website, you can read it, and you reach out to XYZ.
It needs to be housed somewhere, and so it sounds like Melinda
Melinda's the key.
is the key person. So that would be a go-to person. Do parents get a copy of the form that they sign?
If they make their own copy.
So
Yeah, I'm not
maybe
sure
part
if
of the
Melinda sends
process
out a copy.
is that once we receive the form, it's just automatically copied and sent out to them with the name of a contact person on the bottom of it. I mean, that closes the circle.
It's a good
That's a nice
suggestion, I'm
piece.
just writing it down here.
Yeah, that's a good piece.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the data sharing agreements as presented, except the agreement with Fernbrook Family Center will be changed to have the school board clerk sign on behalf of the district. Motion made by Ms. Tipp, second by Mr. Dierks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
And that carries 5-1. Okay, next up, we have a non-renewal of a teacher.
So the recommended resolution relates to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contract of Ryan Lance, a probationary teacher. You can see the resolution as well as the letter.
Move to approve the resolution relating to the termination and not renewal of the teaching contract of Ryan Lyons, probationary teacher. Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Rose, second by Ms. Tower. Any other discussion?
Question.
Yes, Ms. Wright?
Is the counselor position under the teacher's contract?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the resolution relating to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contract with Ryan Lance, a probationary teacher. Motion made by Ms. Rose, seconded by Ms. Tower. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
No, it's a
opposed?
resolution.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do roll call going this way this time. Ms. Rowe? Aye. Ms. Tipp? Aye. Mr. Dierks?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Tower? Aye. And chair votes aye, so that carries 6-0. Thank you for reminding me. I thought of it and then it fluttered away by the time I opened my mouth. Okay. Next up, our operating levy resolution.
Ms. Paredes, could you join us at the table? So at the last workshop, I believe, or regular board meeting, we talked about having a recommendation to approve a straight renewal on the operating levy referendum. And so Jackie and I contacted our bond counsel through Kennedy Raven. Peter Martin developed the resolution that's attached here. I also included a notice of the election as an extra, just to give you more information about what will be shared with people. So there's a big blank in there. how long would the referendum last? And obviously that's a big decision, but if there is a recommendation tonight, if we can include that as part of the motion so we can be crystal clear and take it to the next step.
Are there questions? Any further discussion? Mr. Anderson summed it up pretty well. We are looking at a renewal of our current authority. The question on the table is for how many years? Traditionally, we have done 5 years, going out after 4, but we could do any number of years up to 10.
Ms. Howard?
Oh, that's from a long time ago.
Okay. Mr. Garrix?
I just raised my hand because I was gonna suggest 8 years.
What did you say? What number did you give?
I gave 8 years as a suggestion, but I think, the last referendum we did it, we wanted to have the voters have a chance to, we felt we had a better chance of passing a referendum. In my opinion, that's the way we did it because we shortened up the time, and if it did, we're not informed. I think we've shown that we are spending the money the way it should be done. The money needs to keep coming, and rather than be tied with us every 4 or 5 years, a longer term would be better. I actually like 10, but sometimes that maybe looks like infinity to people, so I came up with the number 8, in my opinion.
Anyone else have thoughts about the timeline? Ms. Howard?
Why not 8? You're saying 8, but why not 8? That's my question. Anyone?
Great question.
I think the only reason I say is it feels a little clunky, like I like wrong numbers. I think most people do, I don't know, 8 is.
Multiples of 5 is what you like?
Yeah, and but didn't we talk about like the years of elections and when it would fall?
So if this one, and I'm a little bit unclear on how that all works out too. So if it passed this fall, it would supersede the existing.
And would start the timeline over again, is how this is worded.
beginning this year.
Beginning with taxes payable 2023.
Okay, so that would mean that if we did 8 years, we would have to have the renewal, like the last chance renewal on another major election year.
Correct.
So if we did an odd number, it would make our second to last chance fall on a major election year, right? So if we did an odd number, if we did 7 or 9, then
Yes, because then we try at 6 and then 7 would be the.
last chance. I don't know if that's.
So this one would supersede, it wouldn't kick in 2024?
Correct. The way the language is written, it would kick in 2023.
It'll be the same.
Same amount going forwards, but the counting year would start with 2023 instead of 2024.
So then 8 years would put it, would put it again in 8 years if it passed. And 6 months from there or so it would kick in, 7 months or so would kick in again.
So that sounds like makes
like-
more sense to do 8.
I like the idea that it holds on even number election years.
I do too. You get more turnout.
But our last chance would fall on that, right?
Correct. That would be a do or die vote, or we would lose it in an 8 year. Yep.
So if we went 7, you could do the election, you could do it in 6 years.
And still have
9, you
stuff.
could do it in 8, same number of years. That's not a bad idea either.
7, so having that second to last chance at 6 would fall on a presidential election year. Like we're in midterm right now, so it would put us presidential. There's typically more turnout. I don't know if that's.
There's more turnout, but statistically, you're more likely to fail on a presidential election year.
So that's not.
Just statistically, it doesn't mean you will. It's just if you.
Yeah, that's statistics. Yeah, let's stick with the good odds. So that makes me think 9, but.
Or 7.
The odds. But 7 puts it
You
at
may want to just try to
presidential.
do it at 6 to a different number too.
Right. And there's no, between now and whatever term we're saying, there's not another board or the 7 of you could go for another vote for anything between what our current authority up to our max. So we could end up with staggered referendums. Mhm.
And what happens if, like, let's say we set this for 9 and it passes, and a board 4 years from now attempts to switch it up, ask for more, and it fails, this one would still carry on, or it would be back?
Well, it would depend on the ballot language.
Oh,
If they did a revoke and replace, then everything is gone. If they were just doing additional authority, this one would continue on. Mhm.
got it. With that in mind, I think 9 sets future boards up that they would at least have that to work with and be able to go for more if they wanted, but not feel so like under the wire that the rug could get pulled out. I don't know, that's but to me, it doesn't, that to me is not the sticking point. So I guess whatever anyone else wants to go with, any other thoughts?
I like staggered ones where you have it in 3 different batches, but I don't want to break this one up.
Oh,
If you have 3 different ones, if one fails, you don't shut off all your funding. We're kind of in that system of what we got right now. But if a future board sees an opportunity and has a goal and gets them 300 or 400, at least have them be separate. To me, it would make sense in the future to make a separate one rather than revoke and go on. Like that's for future people to decide.
that's somebody else's problem. Yeah.
Ms. Bowerson?
Yep.
Oh, gosh, can't go hand out.
I think on our last election, if I remember right, we did have a $500 one or something going that we revoked to make the new one go in with the big one because it was going to expire in a year or 2 anyway.
Not this last one. This last one was,
LOR.
it was our LOR.
There was something in place that
there-
we had 400 or 500.
There was a law change right before our last referendum to where we, at that time, had a board-approved levy and a voter-approved levy. And right before we went out for election, the board-approved levy dissolved. So it was no longer in statute. So when we went to renew, they went together.
I know there was something. So.
Did any of you have the long-range history of, or knowledge of how it works typically statistically? You know, if there's a magic number of years that seems to have better appeal or less appeal, or?
Here in Red Wing, it's been 5, but I can't say that on a statewide basis.
9 sounds good, but 9 sounds big.
Yeah, sounds so big.
We had Mr. Lifto's firm, I believe it was, as an advisor that did surveys of the community. How likely are you to vote for approval of this type of levy and this length of time, different things. I don't remember what the specifics were, but at the time there was research done to try to determine when people were likely to approve and when they were not likely to approve, that helped shape the determination to go for a 5-year.
So if you go 7, I'm just talking 7. And it fails, we still have another year to come back and try it.
That's a good point. Longer and then ask for 5 next time.
Yeah.
You go 9, you know.
I think 9 is too big.
What's that?
9 is too big, you think?
9's when you're talking children in school, you talk how long you're gonna be here, how long you're gonna do this, 9's a long time.
If you're going on that number, go shorter, don't go longer than 8.
Don't go shorter than 8.
Don't go longer than 8 if you're gonna try to get a odd number. I think.
7, I think sounds better, lucky 7. So,
There's a chance it will pass on a general election. It's happened here before, where we did very little
Campaign.
information sharing. It was just on the ballot as a straight renewal and it passed.
We failed,
Yeah, presidential.
we failed the year before on a standalone.
Right.
So
So it goes all over the place, and I think it's gonna come down to whether voters believe that the school district has spent money as they promised last time. And I can confidently say that yes, and I know that everyone, well, I'm assuming that everyone here, believes that as well, so. That's what it's gonna come down to.
Does anyone want to make the motion and plug in a number?
I can. I move to approve the resolution relating to renewing the expiring referendum revenue authorization of the school district and calling a special election thereon. The proposed referendum revenue authorization will be applicable for 7 years, beginning with taxes payable in 2024, unless otherwise revoked and reduced as provided by law.
How many years was that?
7.
I like this lucky 7.
I kind of dig it too.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion?
I just had a question. It's taxes payable in 2024, that is the correct number.
That is what Peter has in the resolutions. That is not what our discussions were.
Right.
So if that is how we pass it as in the ballot language, it will begin in 2024.
So it would be after the current one
Expires.
expires.
I like that better, replacing.
Mhm.
All right, any other discussion? It is a resolution. So let's do a roll call with Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Dierks.
Aye.
Ms. Tiff.
Aye.
Ms. Rowe.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so that carries 6-0. All right,
Are we also entertaining the resolution for the special election?
okay. I need to find that too. Okay, that one didn't get printed out for me, so let me find it in here. Just gotta scroll through a couple.
It does say in that resolution, a special election is included
Yeah.
in the one we just did.
And
Okay.
calling a special election.
Okay, it was both. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
We just did it.
we did them together.
All right,
Great.
fabulous. So we are on to employee,
We
yes,
did
yes,
also have the
call for election.
I'm just reading the recommendation here.
Yep.
Special election they're on. That's what you're calling the new board members, special election they're on?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Why?
So that's not a special election.
Do we call it a special election at any time?
Yes, for an operating referendum.
No, for board members.
Oh, no, that's.
That was approved at the last
At the last meeting.
meeting.
I thought that's what we're trying to do.
No. Oh, no. We need to approve the special election to
For
put
the
this on
operating
the
budget.
ballot for the operating budget.
So we approved the one for the 3 board member seats earlier, and then this one's for the operating
All right,
level.
as long as you got those other 3 board members covered, I don't want to stay another 4. I'll be dead by then.
Okay, so employee agreements and terms and conditions of employment.
Yeah, I'd like to not consider the program directors and supervisors' terms and conditions of employment.
Okay.
After the posting, there were several questions raised about a variety of issues, and so I think it's better to put on the brakes, take a pause, and we'll bring that back in July.
Okay.
And I'm more than willing to work through some of those issues and then explain them to the interim superintendent, but I think we should wait.
Okay.
The other 3, I think you're good to go. The non-classified personnel terms and conditions at Don Wetter's request. We did start Group B employees at $18 an hour, 2% COLA for others. We eliminated the first 5 steps for each category, We changed bereavement leave to match most of our other agreements. And then there are other red line version changes, that are included in as an extra. Very similar to work with program assistants. You can see Group C employees that start at $15 an hour, 2% COLA for others. And in the principals agreement, the recommendation is for 2% COLA each year. And then once again, we have a red line version for other changes. And then finally, we have the support personnel agreement, significantly different structure to the agreement for support personnel. And I think it's a very good step forward. It doesn't resolve all the issues that both groups have, but we make a really strong movement. So there'd be at least a 2% COLA each year. We'd be eliminating, kind of a misnomer there. We aren't eliminating all steps, but we're eliminating all steps except for 3 of them. So we can get that beginning wage much higher than where we are now. We believe that's going to attract more people to apply for the district. We consolidated job classes. We added an incentive for education assistants to become highly qualified, even if they're not in highly qualified positions. We changed the probationary period so that we have a longer time in most cases to evaluate the person's performance before having to make some of the personnel decisions. We increased longevity pay. We had a slight increase in district contributions for health insurance. We added language for e-learning days. We made significant changes to seniority, layoff, and recall. And we converted catastrophic leave to sick leave pay language, like some of our other groups. So, over 2 years, this particular agreement, the support personnel agreement, would cost about $103,000 over a 2% COLA budget. Just be mindful though that costs related to special education positions are partially reimbursed, so the net costs are not as high as that. But to be honest with you, even if they were, it is worth every penny to make these changes. First, we have a great group of employees that we need to maintain, and we need to attract more people in this career line of work. We have many positions that are still, that were left vacant all year, and we need to make changes for the upcoming year. So I'm proud to present those 4 documents for approval this evening.
The way it's written here, I would have to abstain on all 4 votes if you do it that way. I will abstain at least from the support personnel agreement. I'm okay if you want to put them all together, and then just understand I abstain, you do whatever you want. So I'm just putting that.
Or somebody could make a motion to approve the other 3 and then come back around to the support personnel. So thank you for bringing that up.
I just wanted to chime in a little about the support personnel agreement. I think there was a lot of work done to make the contract and the positions clearer and to better reflect what the actual starting wages were, instead of having a lot of different differentials that made us have to advertise that our starting wage was lower than it actually. Even with the differentials, it was still a little too low to attract enough people, obviously. That's why we have positions available, or part of why. But we increased the wages and fixed a lot of those things so that we can more accurately show what we will actually pay. So I think there were a lot of really good changes, and there was a lot of work done by a lot of different people to make it a clear, more organized contract. Anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would separate these so that Mr. Dukes could vote. And so I'll start with the support personnel. I'd like to make a motion to approve the support personnel agreement.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion is made by Ms. Tisch, second by Ms. Rowe. Is there any discussion?
Question,
Yes.
and there's so many documents. On the support personnel, was there a change in the insurance contribution? I'm just thinking, I have somebody that pays the COBRA part, but through the support personnel, when she worked, she retired now.
Oh,
I don't want to be a conflict here myself, but Mr. Darius, so. Yeah, I'll be abstaining too. I think it's just safe that I'll probably abstain.
yeah, I'm not sure if you'd have to, but if you're not sure,
I am not positive if there's a contribution change what he or she makes that has to do, I don't want to come back saying I supported something
Sure.
for this reason, which it wasn't true. So I'll just totally abstain.
Mr. Bryant, your wife was covered by the non-class, not the support personnel.
I will be
Just to
voting
make
for
that
it. Thank you.
clear. Just to make sure you're standing in the right way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the support personnel agreement made by Ms. Tipp, second by Ms. Rowe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And abstaining?
Abstain.
All right, so that carries 4-0. One abstaining.
Great night.
Oh, two abstain?
No,
Oh, need for the next one.
no, before you start.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, as soon as you're
Well,
done with the vote.
okay.
on it.
Okay, Mr. Deers.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
now,
it's too
I
hot.
didn't want to influence the vote, but I just want to say, I feel it's not a very good contract for employees. This is my final year, I'm not influencing anything I'll be voting on in the future. But what we succeeded in doing is taking a support personnel on average making $16 an hour, getting a 2% raise, which is 32 cents an hour on an average of probably 6 hours a day, it gives them $1.80. It takes you a gallon of gas to get to work, we maybe covered the cost of the increase of that gallon of gas for the employee. I just want to say that's what we gave. In addition, we took our long-term employees and we really didn't do much on the steps for them. We just took out all the lower steps, but you didn't do much justice to the long-term employees. So I've said what I got to say. I will not be influencing any vote on it. I felt it appropriate. I've been kept my mouth shut on a lot of things for a lot of years, but this is what we did. We just would maybe recover a gallon of gas cost increase for our employee in the support personnel. Thank you.
yeah, if I could respond, by the way, thank you for, kind of the order of making those comments. I thought that was very well done. So thank you for that. First couple things first, there's at least a 2% COLA for everyone in the contract. By far, most of them are receiving more than 2%, some significantly more than 2%. We realize that eliminating the steps, helps future employees or some of the employees on the lower steps, currently. But we also added to longevity for, to recognize the years of service for our employees, because that was important too. And that was a joint goal. The union wanted that, but so did the negotiations team. So, at the end of the day, if you just looked at a 2% COLA, we went $103,000 over that, over just 2% COLA. So yeah, I think it's a good settlement for the district and employees. That's my feeling.
So, Mr. Bryant, are you planning to abstain from the non-classified?
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay. So then I'm looking for a motion for either that or for the other two.
I will make the motion to approve the non-classified. But this will separate, you have non-classified personnel terms and conditions of employment.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Tipp, second by Ms. Rowe. Any other discussion about that one? Okay, So there's a motion to approve the non-classified personnel terms and conditions of employment. Motion made by Ms. Tipp, second by Ms. Rowe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And those abstaining?
Abstaining.
All right, so that passes 4-0 with one abstaining. Okay, now we are left with program assistance, terms and conditions of employment, and principals agreement.
I will also make that motion to approve the program assistance terms and conditions of employment and the principals agreement.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Tipp, second by Ms. Rowe. Any discussion? Mr. Dirks?
I will be voting against this. What we're doing here with our principals agreement, going along with my comment on the last one, a principal making $130,000 a year is going to get a 2% increase. That's $2,400 a year. Or that's $2,600. Yes, I should say $120,000 a year principal, and we got some more than that. 2% is $2,400 a year or $200 a month increase. We continue to make this spread bigger and bigger and bigger. We've had a problem hiring on the lower end of our pay scale for people in different low paid positions. Last I checked, when we had advertisements for principals, we had lots of candidates. So I cannot support letting that spread keep getting bigger.
Any other discussion? Okay, so there is a motion to approve the program assistance, terms and conditions of employment and principals agreement. Motion made by Ms. Tipp, second by Ms. Rowe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
All right, so that passes 4-1. Okay, next up is a second reading of policies 619, 624, and 799. They were all pretty non-controversial updated references. And recommendations from MSBA. Does anyone have anything they would like to talk about with those? If not, we are on to our food service prices. So Jess Pena, I saw on the call before. I don't know, are you still, yep, still on there. Awesome, thank you.
Yes.
Workshop presentation about this 2 weeks ago?
Yes, 2 weeks ago.
And I invited Ms. Pena just in case there are questions. We went over it in pretty good detail 2 weeks ago. So my guess is that there'll just be a motion made.
Has anything changed since 2 weeks ago?
Nope, everything's still the same.
Can you just summarize what the changes for the viewers?
Yeah, or Ms. Pena, could you just quickly summarize the changes so that it's a more transparent discussion?
Yes, we're adding 10 cents, 10 cents to meals next year, starting with breakfast. I can read so we add 10 cents for breakfast, 10 cents for lunch across the board. And that was done with the USDA PLE tool numbers. And I had to use the numbers from the 2018-19 school year since we didn't have paid lunches last year. So 10 cents across the board. And then the adult price meals have not come out yet. That'll come out in July for lunches.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve those prices.
I move to approve the breakfast and lunch prices for the 22-23 school year as proposed.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Ms. Rowe, second by Mr. Bryant. Any other discussion? Okay, so motion is to approve the breakfast and lunch prices for 22-23 as proposed. Made by Ms. Rowe, second by Mr. Bryant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And that carries 5-0.
I would just like to say that I'm disappointed that we had to approve this year. I appreciated that families did not have to worry about paying for lunch over the last 2 years. I understand why we have to, but it's disappointing.
Yeah, we really thought there'd be some traction legislatively to reduce the burden on families, but that just didn't work out with this legislative session.
And because of the COVID, that's the first time in my recollection that we had the USDA actually pay for school lunches. Should there be something done on the federal or state level for it? Absolutely. Until they get that, till they decide to correct it. Our parents, as other parents across the state and the country, have to handle this, deal with it. But it would be nice if they would come up with a process for that. But there's a lot of things they should be doing, and the day is too short to be doing that.
Ms. Pinion, do you have more to add?
Yes, I just wanted to add that we are continually advocating for the push. We are still talking with our legislators, and it's still the big talk amongst school nutrition. So we're still pushing for it. We don't know if we're ever going to get it, but that's something that we're always going to advocate for. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is our organizational chart.
I'd like to pull off everything but the special ed part and the teacher and learning and
Director of Teaching and Learning.
director of teaching and learning, deal with those, the rest, push them up to our new superintendent. Gets in.
I would like to make a motion to approve option B for special education leadership.
Yeah.
Did you make a motion?
I did make a motion on that. We just deal with those two for now. Let me
Oh,
do
sorry,
that.
Jim, I thought you
That's
were
okay.
talking about just discussing them. I will second your motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tift to table other organizational chart things other than special education and director of teaching and learning. Did I capture that correctly?
That's good enough for me.
So to be clear, option B for special ed is what's being proposed.
That's not out.
No,
Not
That's
yet.
not-
Not yet.
We're gonna deal with the
that
first
first,
motion.
yes.
I didn't realize you were making a motion. I did, so,
I
okay,
apologize.
that's why I didn't have it very good. Okay, so motion to table aspects of the organizational chart that are not related to the special education and director of teaching and learning, made by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tift. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay,
Say, did we have a vote on the food service prices?
Yes, we did.
yes,
Okay.
it was.
Just wanted to make
yeah,
sure.
5-0.
Now you can go ahead with that motion.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve option B for special education.
And I will second that.
Okay, motion to approve option B for special education. Made by Ms. Tiff, second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion?
Or you take my hand down?
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. That carries 5-0. So remaining as a potential conversation is Director of Teaching and Learning. I like the idea of requiring a principal's license and/or superintendent's license preferred, and then see what we get for applicants and let the interim director, or interim superintendent, see what the options are that come out and go from there.
So, yeah, great point. I like principal license and superintendent license.
Optional?
Considered, recommended, preferred, optional,
I think,
bonus points, you know, I'm just trying to, if I'm assistant superintendent, but not a principal, and I want to apply for this, would I get the same points as a principal?
Oh, if you have a superintendent's
Can you
license,
get
but not a
a
principal.
superintendent's license without a principal's license?
Yes.
So, principal license preferred, in lieu of principal license, a superintendent or assistant superintendent license would be allowed, considered, recommended, replace, what's the word I'm looking for?
I think we could just say principals and or superintendent, and then if
Okay,
that covers all the bases, and the interim superintendent can make the decision on.
Right.
That should go.
principal
And/or
and or superintendent's license,
Preferred or required? I would
preferred,
say required.
I'd say preferred. Required on the principal, and I think you want to put preferred on the superintendent.
what would happen if you had a superintendent without a principal license? Would it work?
To be able to follow the organizational chart you have laid out.
I've never been asked that question before. And the reason I'm hesitating is that I know there was a superintendent, I think out of Chaska, who was a non-traditional student who went back and got his superintendent's license
Without being principal.
without being a principal. So,
Matt Schultz did it.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say for sure that it would work unless I checked with, or unless Amy French checked with the state board or the board of school administrators to make sure that doesn't change anything. I would hate to throw out something now. I think it would be just fine, but I would hate to say for sure.
So if we say principal and or superintendent's license required, that would mean one or the other, or both, is like the minimum requirement for the job. And then if somebody applies who only has a superintendent's license, our interim superintendent gets to figure out the finer points of that.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if there's somebody with just a superintendent's license.
I would be
It's pretty
too.
rare,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I'm good with that. I think preferred,
You think preferred, not required?
oh, no, I meant required, yeah, I think we need to,
Required for both?
and
One or
or,
the other.
If we say and or required,
And
then it's
or-
one or the other or both. That covers our bases, and then we can, or not us, but the superintendent can make heads or tails of.
We're making this too hard, that's it. Okay, we're making this too hard. Principal license required,
I think if you said principals and or superintendent's license, and then you guys can decide if it's preferred or required. I know
we
that's,
don't even need to say preferred or required. Needed,
well, that'd be the same as required in my book.
it could be,
Mhm.
And if we can't, if we hire somebody who does not have one or the other of those licenses, they cannot supervise principals or supervise
Teachers.
any teachers.
Mhm.
And I think it's important that the director of teaching and learning,
Superintendent
Superintendent.
can supervise principals.
yes, if they have a principal's license, they can't.
Without that.
But what Anna's saying is that, you know, if somebody walks in without a principal license and without a superintendent's license, then that person cannot evaluate teachers,
Right.
those kinds of things. Yeah, I think you're thinking the same thing.
right, and I think we heard before that that's tricky when you've got a director of teaching and learning who's going into the classrooms and giving advice and tips on what they should be doing, but they don't have that licensure. I mean, it gets kind of tricky. This would clean that up a little bit.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
I will make the motion to, list or post for the position of Director of Teaching and Learning, requiring a principal and or superintendent license.
I will second that.
Okay, so there's a motion to post the position of Director of Teaching and Learning with a principal's and or superintendent's license required. Motion made by Ms. Tift, second by Ms. Rowe. Any other
With
discussion?
or mean you have to have it?
Means you need to have one or the
Yeah,
other.
it sounds
Or both is
like.
fine.
Or both.
And.
One or the other or both.
But maybe we should we put in it, but both are?
Yeah, but, okay, all those in
Well,
favor?
no, I just
Oh, sorry.
wondered if you could discuss it for one of the.
Oh, yes.
Otherwise, a second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0. All right, and we will look forward to seeing where that takes us. All right, thanks for hanging out with us all night. Ms. Paradis, would you like to come back up and talk about the budget for the,
Are you voting on the special ed, or do you want me?
we already did. Did we?
Yep.
Oh, I missed that, sorry.
That you're not gonna-
For cruising right along.
Watching a baseball game on my phone. I know what did.
I love the honesty.
It's my son.
Technology like us in two places at once.
Yes.
Blessing.
So I have the budget presented for you tonight. There have been no changes since the workshop earlier this month. Like we discussed there, we are taking $245,000 out to complete the LED project for the portions that are not eligible for LTFM, and another $200,000 out of fund balance to continue to support 8 permanent substitutes through Teachers on Call. Are there any additional questions?
No, I move to approve the fiscal year 2023 budget as presented.
I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Rhodes, second by Mr. Dukes. Any other discussion? Yes, Ms. Wright?
I was not supportive, I was supportive of the 240 for the lights. I was not supportive because we saved 60-some thousand on interest. I was not in favor of the taking fund balance to continue our operational costs, which will just grow down the road, so I will not be in support of the budget. I like the budget except for that, so just so you're aware.
Any other discussion? All right, so we have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023 budget as presented. Motion made by Ms. Rowe, second by Mr. Dierks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Hey,
And that passes
I was-
4-1.
I was looking
Were
at
you
something
watching
here, I'm sorry.
You were the one taking the nap that time.
He's just
I
trying to-
I apologize, I was looking at something else here.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting for me on that.
Okay, acting superintendent. So we have a couple of options for acting superintendent. For the time frame, which we're not quite sure how long this will be yet, but between July 1st and when our interim superintendent is officially put in place with an approved contract.
If I could
Yeah.
remove Sherry Johnson's name from the
Okay.
list, she and I talked over the last couple of days, and she's willing to help in some capacities, such as recruiting people through Edium. It's not worth chatting about, it's a complicated thing. But we have Lisa Stigurda, who acts on behalf of the superintendent, so we have that part covered. And so I think it's really either Nicole or Frank.
In our agenda meeting, Arlen and I were asking about what is appropriate compensation for that. Some districts, sorry, I need to find my email here again from Barb Dorn. So I did ask her if she had any input about what other districts do. Some
This is on acting.
for acting superintendent, yep.
She said, for a staff member who can serve as acting superintendent for a few weeks, there aren't many guidelines about what to pay them for that work. Since it will only be for a few weeks, however, one suggestion might be to pay them $100 to $150 per day on top of their current compensation. Our district's legal counsel might have language we could incorporate into a board motion or even a very short contract to ensure that the duties are covered and pay expectations are clear. We also need to make sure that we have an identified official with authority, so I'm not sure if that would be the same.
That's Lisa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So that was her input, otherwise, Mr. Bryant, you're first up.
Thank you. An acting superintendent, we kind of had discussions briefly. Do we need to have 40 hours a week? Do we need every other day, 3 days a week, something like that? I don't think with Lisa here, I don't think we need somebody every day, I'll be honest. 3 days a week is probably appropriate. If it changes, then we can address that. But I think we need to have that discussion tonight too. How many days we decide what we're going to compensate a person for. So I was to make a motion if you want me to, but I want to make sure we have that discussion how many days too. Probably before that or not.
We can make the motion for who we
I
want
make
to
a
be.
motion that we offer acting superintendent to interim superintendent begins employment to Mr. Frank Norton.
I'll second that.
And I just have one last comment before I turn it over to somebody else. If I may?
Sure.
Thank you. The next discussion we should have at this point is how many days. Maybe we need to talk to Mr. Norton about that if the motion passes. But we're also compensating him already for 20 additional days. So that was a logical choice there to consider him because we're already compensating for principal. So I think the fact that he'll be here, if this motion passes, to compensate him for like 3 days a week. That's just my comment.
Do you have a sense, Mr. Anderson, of what the work will entail for that 2 to 3 week?
There may be nothing.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, because Lisa is the Iowa, the identified official with authority, Iowa.
So just maybe 1 day, 2 days, maybe
Yeah.
maybe I'm,
Or
as
as needed.
as needed, yeah.
And I don't wanna, it depends, I'm assuming that someone's selected on the 27th or the 28th and that, the contract is settled, or approved on July 11th. If it lasts longer than that, then I think it's a different issue. One possibility would be to do something like Mr. Bryant suggested, have 1 day per week, or maybe it's 3 days between July 1st and July 11th at a certain rate, or additional time as approved by Ms. Austin or something, to give you a little wiggle room. But because of Lisa's presence and Sherry's expertise with Iowa, that part's going to be taken care of. So I just don't see it as being a large burden. But there's a commitment that's being made. In this case, if Mr. Norton is approved, that he will be available as necessary. So that's worth something.
And his licensure.
And his licensure, yeah.
Ms. Rowe?
Well, I was just saying, maybe we don't approve it for a day or 3 days. Maybe it's just this contractual time from this date to this date as needed or whatever. It's a blanket dollar amount because you can't ever say, oh, something's going to happen on a Wednesday. And then we're paying you Wednesday, but sorry, something's happening Thursday. So, I just think you kind of have to keep it might need to be broader.
Good point.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Mr. Dukes?
I'd like to keep us to the motion first and then discuss the pay. I have some points I'd like to make on it, but I, if possible, I'd prefer that we act on the motion of the person because the motion is here. And then if
So
everybody's all right, I just put that out there.
the motion is to, remember your verbiage, to offer the position of acting superintendent to Frank Norton from July 1st until the interim superintendent begins employment. Motion made by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Rowe. I can capture that correctly? Okay. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, so that carries 5-0. All right, so, Mr. Jerks.
There's a value to a superintendent's license, that there should be compensation that's available no matter when it's needed during that time. We're required by law to have somebody available. It doesn't say Monday through Friday or 3 days a week. It says every day, as far as I know. The other part of it is, I don't want to pick on Mr. Anderson's salary. I have no problem with it, but his pay is approximately $500 a day or more with benefits. I don't know the exact number, but at least $500 a day, okay? And I don't think.
Plus benefits. Yeah.
I don't think it would be out of line to pay $100 a day until the interim position is filled. We're still $400 a day plus benefits on the plus side if we were to offer 100 or 150. We need to do this and not be rushed into the interim decision, but still have all our bases covered. So I am in full support of just paying a flat per day fee, whatever we agree on until we hire that in. Thank you.
What is our sub rate?
It's about-
$50 a day?
Well, he's already getting paid.
Oh, you mean for the principal?
Yeah.
Ms. Paradis will have to.
Well, I'm just asking that question because, they are, even though they may or may not be doing a significant amount of work, you're right, they're still being paid for their expertise and that licensure. And the off chance that we're gonna need them for something big or major, we don't know. So I think, I would say 100 or 150 is kind of low in my book, but.
But then again,
Oh, we're looking at 8 business days.
And actually, I'm counting
We
6,
do 11.
because we have July 1st, the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Oh, it's
July
the 4th,
holidays,
sure.
and then the 11th.
Yeah.
we need one. So it'd be 6 days.
You gotta have that license there on the weekends and holiday too, don't you?
So
There's
8
Not that it's gonna be used on
There's
that
another
day.
ballast issue.
Another
God
fire.
forbid, right? If something happens in the evening or on the weekend, we do need to have somebody.
Mr. Bryant.
thank you. I like the idea of what Derek's mentioned. I didn't like the idea of 7 days a week. Because he just said $500 some a day plus benefits. Now you got to add in 365, decide. So the value goes way down. But I wouldn't have any problem with $100, $125 a day, and he comes in when needed. Whether he's in the building or not, he's still, like you said, he's got value to that license, and he's getting already compensated for 20 extra days on the principal side too. He may or may not even come in and do anything, but we need him for that position. And I don't think, honestly, we may make a decision on the 11th, but that doesn't mean the person's starting on the 12th.
Actually, that's a very good point. That's when the contract's gonna be approved, but there may be obligations in another district if things come.
Maybe something, we don't know, the
Yeah.
person isn't gonna give me the keys, I'll be there at 8 o'clock.
Mr. Garten has to be willing to do this for this amount of money too.
And nobody said the position, like we said, has to be in here, because at least it's the point, hey, we need you to come in sometime to do something. He can do it when he's doing it for the principal stuff.
So I'm hearing a lot of different options, either a per day, or do we kind of prorate out what that per day might be? So we offer something like $1,000 for the time period, or, that's approximately in that 100 to 150 a day kind of thing.
So my question is, when's a new person starting?
But if we said, if we had a flat rate and then a X amount beyond that, or we negotiate beyond that, or do we set a per day amount?
Sounds to me like it's a per day amount makes more sense, because we don't know how many days we're here, so then we're doing extra math and it's harder for payroll, and we just do something simple and easier.
Per work day or per calendar day, we'll have to make sure that's.
My number on Carson was calendar day, not work day.
Yeah, I would say that too.
I did 2,080 hours. I'll make a motion that we do pay Mr. Norton up to $2,000 to fill the position until the new person starts. Through the month of July.
Can I ask clarifying with the up to, are you putting?
$2,000 for the month of July, pay Mr. Norton to fill in until the new person starts. The goal is till August, and we have to have further discussion. Person starts the 18th of July, he gets $2,000.
Okay. So do I have a second? The motion that I have is that we would pay Mr. Norton up to $2,000.
I'm sorry, $2,000.
We would pay, okay. $2,000 during the month of July until the new interim superintendent takes possession. My brain is melted today. Till the interim superintendent is hired. Okay, so is there a second for this?
Well, speak up at once.
Okay, so that's looking like it's dying for lack of a second. Would anybody like to make an alternative motion?
I'll make a motion that we pay Mr. Norton $150 per calendar day in the month of July until the new superintendent contract is signed and implemented.
Okay, so a motion is to pay Mr. Norton $150 per calendar day during the month of July until a new interim superintendent contract is implemented.
And it's calendar day.
I will second that.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Rowe, second by Ms. Tift. Is there any other discussion? Okay, so our motion is to pay Mr. Norton $150 per calendar day during the month of July until the new interim superintendent contract is implemented. Motion made by Ms. Rowe, second by Ms. Tift. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, so that carries 5-0 for 5-0.
And I'm assuming that's additional above and beyond.
Yes.
That's all.
For the interim superintendent, or yeah, for the acting superintendent. Okay. Next up is interim superintendent search. So I have a couple of updates. So I received questions from most people that I just listed out. Amy French was kind enough to go through them. The red line version that we have is her changes to make them fit better with what she thinks works effectively in an interview and is legal and all of that jazz, which leaves us with 10 questions. I think 10 is a good number, but I'm open to the discussion about those. In addition to the question, I did get clarification that we cannot have a closed session to discuss the contract for the interim superintendent because it is not a bargaining group. So we can go into closed session to discuss our parameters and things like that when it's a collective bargaining group, but not for interim superintendent because it's not a collective bargaining group. So we will have to have that conversation out in the open. I did reach out to Barb Dorn about that as well. She said it totally depends on circumstances. Sometimes an interim has no need for health or retirement benefits, in which case a higher salary may be expected in lieu of benefits. Sometimes they have an interest in the permanent position, in which case you want to be careful not to offer too much so their expectations aren't out of line should they eventually be hired long-term. There is somebody who she spoke with, I don't know who, that has interim superintendent experience, and when helping districts short-term, often part-time, he charges a daily rate. The rate is $675 with no sick, holiday, vacation days, no benefits, no retirement. $675 a day. Otherwise, most districts use their current superintendent's total compensation package as a starting point for discussions, then take it from there depending on the successful candidate's wants and needs. So that's a whole other kettle of fish for discussion and probably a different day. But I think those are the big things. Also, I'm not sure, I don't think Amy included this in her email, but we cannot really ask follow-up questions. That just gets real sticky. So better to just ask the open-ended question, let people talk, and move on from there. Otherwise, we were pretty much on the right track as far as having the same person ask the same question, that type of thing. And regardless of how many questions we decide to ask, I have made a Google form so that we can have that up and we can score each question from 1 to 10. And then I put in another thing of overall impression, but I can add or take away any of those things. But I figured that way each of us could score each candidate on each question, and we can just kind of, it'll dump out into a spreadsheet so we can average it out and kind of get those numbers calculated pretty quickly without having to have too much discussion. Of course, based on scores, we could still hire somebody who has the lowest score because of whatever reason that might be. We're totally free to do that, but just gives us a starting point. So, Ms. Tiff, you're first in the queue.
I really like these questions. I think they cover a broad range of things that are important to us and the district. And thank you, Amy, for organizing this. I like how they sound. I like that they're 10, very clean. I don't know if we need a motion, but I would gladly make a motion to use these 10 questions.
Mr. Dirks, you're in the.
Yeah, I apologize, I did not submit any questions. I guess I didn't know I was supposed to do that. I messed up here.
It's okay.
Maybe everybody's going, yeah, you. That's okay. These are great questions, and I would be honored to ask one of them if that's what the goal is to do it. All of these are good questions. I'm very supportive of, I'll do whatever you like. I think there's muddy things up if I was put some more and then have to review them and stuff like that. So I'm very good with these. And yes, I did not submit it yet. The other part, when you're talking about compensation negotiating, so if I'm hearing it right, we would have to bring the individual that we select in here in a public meeting and discuss pay at that meeting. And would that be another special meeting after the Monday or Tuesday next week then?
So it's possible that our negotiating team can handle it. If
In
the
a
recommendation.
public negotiating team?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Thank
as
you.
their committee. The recommendation, so I think you all probably remember Barb Dorn saying that her recommendation is to be very conservative on the open meeting laws when it comes to how many board members are there. Her feeling, MSBA's feeling is to only have like, anytime there's more than one board member, it's open meeting, noticed, all of that stuff. That said, we know that not everybody comes, it doesn't have to be broadcast and all of that, so there's still some level of privacy involved with it. Unless we opted to have only one board member, and then we aren't really tied to that so much. And I think a lot of us were in agreement that Ms. Rose would be great to be on there because she's negotiated a superintendent's contract. I would be fine having just her, but if we wanted to have another person as well. But along with Amy French and Jackie Paradis, they both agreed to be part of that as well. So it could just be one board member, and then of course it comes back to the full board for us to say yay or nay based on what the final dollar amount compensation package looks like. Or we could have multiple board members, but then we do have to have it.
Can we go in closed session to set parameters prior to that?
No.
Of what we want to?
No, which is what we wanted to do, and I was told a couple times.
So basically we look at the contract that you sent out, we kind of start there.
And with what we're currently paying, what we would like to pay, what the person's expertise, qualifications, all that.
If we go into closed session to set the parameters prior to selecting?
No.
So
No
The
closed
only
session for
time-
anything ever.
Yeah, the only time you go into closed session is if you're negotiating a strategy with a certified bargaining group up through.
I'm just trying to be creative around the laws here, I mean, if timing was an issue. I'm very supportive of the negotiating committee or individual doing it. I would trust an individual to follow some parameters that would be consistent with MSBA's experience, I guess. So I'm good with whatever you come up with, but assuming we make a decision next Tuesday, there's gotta be a number ready to put out there pretty soon after that, so.
I'm also assuming that Ms. Paradis and Ms. French would be part of the process too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she said that.
Yeah. So,
Yep, they both agreed to be part of the negotiations, and that.
So I'm clear, next Monday we're interviewing, we're getting back together on Tuesday to discuss and decide. So do we want to, on that Tuesday, decide who's gonna go into negotiations, or is there?
Or we can decide tonight.
Decide now, because maybe that Tuesday, or Wednesday, I mean, we should get ready to go pretty quickly after that so that we can start negotiating with that person.
Can we have a person or a committee meet prior to the selection, so we have a number to put out next Tuesday? I mean, if we had one person and Jackie and Amy, if they're willing, come up with a number to offer, can we have that done ahead of time to Tuesday? Am I pushing the process too fast? I don't know.
Yes. Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. Couple questions. Do we want to have a 10-point system, or is that just something 5-point? Like you said, the points are good, but we may take the second or third person based upon the points.
I think it's just a place to start, and that way we can see where there might be something where we align or where we don't, that maybe we want to discuss.
And secondly, we talked about forming a negotiating team to meet on the 30th with the candidate. We have the 30th marked down here.
Oh.
I have the 30th marked down for some.
Okay.
And I'm willing, I have the time, being retired, I have the time, I'm willing to help with negotiations if you want. So. For some reason, I had the 30th down, we were gonna negotiate, so. Because you wanna negotiate with the person.
Right.
Because our committee would be with that person and come up with something on the 30th, is what I took it as, conversations, and then present something on the 11th.
Yeah, we would bring to the board.
The board.
Is it, possible to have whatever committee is chosen to meet an hour prior to having the candidate come in for that negotiation session? So we do have a start number?
And you don't want to stream it either.
I don't think we have to, but it would be posted. I like the idea of figuring out a date and a time so that we can post it. If people want to come.
For some reason, we talked about the 30th.
I could do the 30th, as long as it's during the
I could do
day.
the 30th if the board wishes to have your panel to help.
And, I mean, we don't know what the candidate schedule
Right.
might be like, so, I mean, in order to have a meeting, we have to post it in advance, but yet we don't have the benefit of knowing what their schedule is. But it wouldn't hurt to put something out there, and then even if the candidate can't come, the committee could at least meet and kind of have their conversation and then go from there.
Well, and the following week is a really tough week for people.
Yeah.
Most people are
4th of July.
on commission.
And on the 27th, is something we could just say, if you are selected, we're looking at negotiating on the 30th, how to keep that in mind. The person may be virtual anyway,
Right.
you know?
As far as I know, so I did talk to all 3 candidates, and all 3, I offered for all 3 the option to be virtual, but all 3 said that they would be here, more than likely, barring any unforeseen circumstances.
Nice.
All 3 were interested in coming in person, so.
I contact somebody.
We need to have a room, make sure we have a room designated that they can sit in outside of this room, set up for,
Yeah, and Lisa can work on that.
okay.
Do we need a motion about the negotiating team? And I'd be happy to make a motion that Pam and Jim, Jackie and Amy negotiate with the interim superintendent.
Second?
So we have a motion by Ms. Tiff, second by Mr. Bryant, to have Pam, Jim, Jackie, Paradis, and Amy French as our negotiating team.
And one last, and I do like these questions the way they're done. I do.
Any other discussion about the negotiating team? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And that carries 5-0. So how about the 4 of you guys connect, figure out your schedules, and offline, you guys can figure out what works for you. We'll get it posted, and that way,
Sure.
move ahead. Maybe you guys want to pick a couple of days. I don't know. Whatever you want to do. Ball's in your court. Look forward to hearing from you on the 11th with what you decide.
Why don't you and
Thankful it's not me.
you and I check our calendars and we can throw some time out for them because,
Well, Jackie's here too, so maybe the 3 of
yeah,
us.
and
will
Amy
then-
was on the call. so-
Yes.
Amy, are you still there?
So we'll pick out some dates.
Yep, I'm here. I am on vacation through the 30th. I don't return till the 1st, but I could do later in the day on the 30th.
What time's later in the day?
If it's 4 o'clock or after, I could make that work.
I could do 4.
I could do 4. I have something at 6, so we'll have to be
Okay.
done by 5:30.
And
I
I had a baseball game at 6,
What's that?
We'll be done by then.
out of town.
all right, you guys figure.
I could join virtually from the car. We'll be driving back from vacation, if
Let's
that's
talk.
okay.
Let's talk.
Outside the meeting.
Yeah, let's
Sounds
talk.
good.
Ann Robertson posted a clarification that the June 27th agenda includes selection of individual to enter into negotiations to become interim superintendent. I believe, Ann, we had that on there because we thought in case it was super clear and we want to make our decision that night, that we have that as an option for us, because we can't add things, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, we can't add things to an agenda when it's a special meeting. But that and Ann's comment is that no June 28th meeting is scheduled. We do have it scheduled in our invite sent out by Lisa, but I guess I don't know if there's been a formal posting of it yet. We do have some time for that one on the 28th, although we would need to do it soon. Ms. French.
Yeah, I just got to thinking, I can do any time on the 30th if, I'll just have to join virtually though, since I'll be on vacation, but I can make any time on the 30th work.
We'll be in contact. We'll talk. Thanks, Amy.
Yep.
Okay, is there any other discussion or do we want to have a motion about these questions? One thing, so I didn't get questions from Nikki. So like Arlen said, he didn't send in questions. Some people's questions overlap, so it wasn't, you can kind of see that from the list of the ones that were originally submitted, and they were kind of pared down to kind of fit together. But I don't know if 10 is our maximum. Yes, Lisa has posted the meeting, sorry. Thank you, Lisa. If we want to leave space for Nikki to add in a question because she wasn't here to add her question in, I don't know. It isn't here tonight. I don't know if we want to leave one question for Nikki to connect with Amy to develop, in case Nikki has one that she wants to add in, or if we want to make any changes. Any thoughts?
My suggestion is you do the 10 questions, and you do the first person, whoever that is, you write, whoever gonna start, write their name down, because somebody will do 2 questions, and this next person comes, we'll start off, 4th person will go down and put your name right by it. That way everybody's get as equal opportunity to ask questions as possible.
A suggestion from, and Amy, I'll just let you talk.
Thank you. I guess if you were going to eliminate one, my choice would be number 10. Only because it would be hard for the person to respond to that without ever being in the role in the first place. That could be one that you could logically omit to make room for Nikki's question.
And I think,
Well, we got 7 members and 10 questions already.
I think when we talked before, it was recommended, I don't remember if you recommended it though, or if somebody else did, that the same person asks the same question for each one, or is it okay for us to do what Jim is suggesting, that we kind of rotate through so that it's not always one of us has 2 questions, 3 of us have 2 questions and.
You can rotate, but I guess my preference is that the same person always asks the same question. So that maybe because there's an inflection in someone's voice or some, just a natural sort of way someone talks, it could reflect differently in the question. That's just my suggestion. I mean, you can also do what Jim is suggesting, whatever is more comfortable for all of you, or just have one designated person that reads the questions. That could also be easier. I prefer though, just to have the same people ask the same questions every single time.
Okay. I'm good with that. Okay, do we want to leave question 10 in or take it out and leave space for Nikki to?
How many questions do you want? Do you want 7?
What's your ideal, Ms. French? What's the ideal number of questions in your opinion?
I think no more than 10. You want to leave room for people to not feel rushed or for you to have to interrupt them with 10 minutes left and say, don't mean to rush you, but we have 6 more questions to get through. Because it's really easy for some people to just go on and on and on a particular subject that they're passionate about. So I would state up front, I notice Karsten smiling as I say that. I would state up front what the time limit is so that they're aware, and that you may state partway through, like we're halfway through, just to remind you, just so you kind of stay on track. But I wouldn't do more than 10 because these are kind of open-ended questions, which is what you want. You want people to talk. And you want to give them 2 to 3 minutes a question. You think of it that way, with a little bit of wiggle room in there. So I think 10 is really good. 10 solid questions.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. And I think we want to, at the start of the interview, have the person introduce themselves for a few minutes too, to talk about a little bit about themselves. That some things we may, we don't talk, obviously they apply, we have that, but a little bit about themselves. I think there's always, interviews I've been on for admin and stuff like that, they always want to ask, please tell us a little bit about yourself. 2 to 3 minutes, please tell us a little bit about yourself, so.
Well, and to that, that's good, Jim. Thank you. The first question, we could always expand that a bit to talk beyond just your school administrator background. So we could add that, so that one becomes a little bit longer, but that's always tough for some people because sometimes, and I will tell you from experience, they will go back to when they graduated high school and walk you through every step of their career. And some of that may be completely irrelevant. So, I mean, completely up to you guys if you want me to expand that and tweak that to kind of incorporate what Jim was mentioning, or maybe they just simply introduce themselves and where they're from or something like that. I don't know.
You can even remove number 1 and just, they could talk about how you got there today, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Because you're right, if somebody goes off on 3-4 minutes, we're gonna be pushing the hour each time.
Yeah.
I think tell us a bit about your background. I think that, I don't know, to me that feels open enough that it gives the room for them to introduce themselves and whatever they think is relevant, I guess. I don't know.
Well, yeah, you can tell a lot about somebody
choose to
by
say.
what they choose to talk about. What's the
Back in my college days.
right? I know what you talked about.
And I think if we're trying to shorten, the other question that I would eliminate is 6 for me personally.
Yep.
I'm kind of over it.
That's really right.
I don't know.
like that question.
You do, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, just leave them open.
So
Honestly, I don't know that we want to add a last second question. I think we
Go with the 10 that are here.
go with the 10 that are here and move on.
Okay.
Can I just say something about the number 6 question? I think the goal of that one was to speak to flexibility.
Okay.
And thinking quickly and pivoting and all those catchphrases that came to be during that time.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what they come up with.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Well, I will make a motion to approve the 10 questions presented.
Okay. Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
So we have a motion to approve these 10 questions as our interview questions. Motion made by Ms. Tiff, second by Ms. Rowe. Any other discussion?
Keep them guarded. Questions.
Yes.
Don't share them.
No.
If you're asked.
All right. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, nay. All right. So that passes 5-0. Yes, Mr. Dirks.
Would it be possible to get this email to us or and print for the meeting with all the red and stuff in one simple thing? Just a suggestion, and then some determination will need to be made on who's gonna ask the extra questions. Or it's just gonna be one person gonna ask certain, maybe 4 questions as a board chair or whatever.
Just assign them. You want to just assign them and then,
But I'm okay with whatever, and I don't need to ask, I'll ask one, I don't need double, unless nobody wants to do double.
Okay.
But I would like you, I would hope that we could have you set the format and
Sure.
I'll assign this out if that's okay.
Okay, other things, does anyone have strong feelings about the 10-point scale. I just, when I have 5, I'm like, what if I want to give them a 4.5?
I was just asking, I come up with 10. It doesn't matter to me.
It's round, it ends up to be 100 points, so.
Just,
That's fine, I guess.
do we have to show everybody our scale? And in the end, I just assume make my decision on what I see, but I probably use the scale for use. But if I have to make a scale that we're gonna disclose to everybody, then I need to know that ahead of time.
So the way that I have it set is that I don't see who puts in what scores. It just has, like, it'll have a timestamp, so it's a Google form, but I don't see which person submitted which thing, which numbers,
I
So
think you may want to check with
to see
MSBA.
if that's legal.
Yeah, because I don't know the answer to that, but, this is
You gotta
a
save it.
public document.
You gotta save them.
Mhm.
Ms. French, do you have any input about the scoring thing, or if that's okay, have it a Google form, or do we just?
I wouldn't do a Google form. I would probably, in this case, do a paper
Yeah.
ballot and submit those. And to Jim's point about, not sharing this, no, I locked down that form, the link that I sent you guys with the questions. No one has access except who I shared it with, and everyone's here on the screen except for Carson, didn't see him either, but just so you know that those are secure.
Okay.
But I would choose to do a paper ballot. That would be my choice.
Could we do paper and then enter it there? So there's a record of the paper document, but it's entered into that program. So
End of the day, we have to give that, those paper documents, what she's saying, no Google, and the paper documents to Amy, to store, to
They
save
go on a file, right?
as for a
If
record.
they're,
If somebody comes back to question them, right, to look at.
they're just an individual worksheet, do we have to do that? That doesn't get turned in. Do we have to do something that gets turned in?
It needs to be turned in.
It has to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't have to have your name on it, but I'll need to collect them at the end and gather all the information. And all of the application information is kept in a locked file. So,
All your notes, everything that you do
Yeah.
during the review is gonna be collected by, either Ms. Ostendorf or Ms. French and maintained, like Mr. Bryan said, for 2 years, whatever that.
Whatever the time frame is.
I thought we had different parameters on superintendent.
What do I know? It's my first
That,
rodeo.
that's my understanding, and we want to
On an
assume.
interim, I thought there was a different parameter on the interim, that heard an issue. But I'm wrong so many times that.
So you're gonna make a paper copy of each question,
Amy can.
or somebody will, because we're gonna want room to take notes and write our number on there somewhere, right?
Yep, all right, spot to write.
Spot, yeah, notes and numbers. And are we putting numbers in as they're answering them or at the end? Because sometimes,
What do you wanna do?
okay,
Yeah, and if we're doing it on paper, you've got time to scribble it out and
The number reflects how well you thought they answered the question.
at the time.
So you could have all 5s or all 0s of somebody. Good. Or. It's all gonna be, so.
It'll be fun.
Could have 11s.
10 plus.
Okay, is there anything else we need to discuss about the interim superintendent search at this point?
No, but I know how much work that you're putting in here, so thank you for your leadership, because it's a lot. So thank you.
Is there anything else, Ms. French, that you feel like we need to know before Monday?
no, just hang in there, everybody. You're getting it done. Anna, if you need to meet with me, I leave on Friday for vacation.
Okay.
So Friday to Thursday or whatever. But if you need to meet with me, we can get something in this week yet. If you want to go through the questions and develop a format or whatever, just send me an email.
Sounds good. All right, our upcoming meetings and future topics are kind of filled in. Of course, the further out we get, the more flexible they are, but we did try to plug in some of those things like the Stop It Bullying app and, you know, some other things that we had kind of talked about that didn't have assigned dates. Yes, okay. Yes.
Is school safety on the list of topics at all? Yeah, I didn't see it on there, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I think we were gonna put it August 1st, was it? So that the person, or was it the 15th?
Was someone going to ask that?
Buildings and grounds, on the buildings and grounds too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Pat to come in too. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been added. I
Yeah,
put
it's just
this
not updated on
in
us.
there before.
Sure,
Okay. I just want to make sure.
I don't remember if we put it
on.
on the 1st or the 15th, but we did have it on something. Yeah.
Long-term facility maintenance, if you want to elaborate on that, we were talking about workshop maybe or maybe not, maybe
Yeah,
just
thank
needs
you.
an approval, does it need more discussion in a workshop setting or not? Usually,
Yeah, we've been trying to do the discussion about a, significant issue at a workshop and then 2 weeks later have approval. But with only one meeting in July and because of state guidelines and one of the forms are initially issued, it just doesn't work out unless we put it on a special meeting. Me personally, I think we have a really strongly set deferred maintenance program with Alan Gaylor, Kevin Johnson, and Jackie Paris. I know we've talked about these issues, every year. So I think we can just do it in the one meeting in July, but I didn't want to assume that because if you want a broader discussion beforehand, then we should decide that
that has to be
now.
done before August 1st, right?
Yeah.
And we also have DCED, which we approved, every district has to approve because they're all part of it, but goes through DCED first and then comes to each individual board for an approval on it too. So that's scheduled also on the 18th.
I think personally, I would leave the LTFM as the meeting on July 18th, and if there's anything that we don't feel comfortable voting on and we table it, then at that point, we can decide to have to add an extra meeting in July before the cutoff if we need to, but hopefully.
That's what I'll assume unless, board members feel otherwise.
Okay,
Sounds good.
all right. So then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Second. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tift. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. That carries 5-0. We are adjourned at 8:31 p.m.
Hey, that's good.
Where?
We'll have somebody.
I was up.